You are dead. Again. Cause of death. A. Explosion damage. B. Standing in fire until crispy. C. Alcohol poisoning by superheated dwarven whiskey. But as always, you have options. Log out. Return to the real world. Overrated. Cost 1 SP. You're a contract worker. Browse the global data net. Information is power. Also costs 1 SP. Play vintage video games. We'll pick the ones you're good at. Check notifications. Always entertaining, sometimes terrifying. Ozzy, familiar with his death routine, opened his notifications. Congratulations. You have slain an elite Tier 2 demon. In doing so, you've completed the quest, turned Sedgwick into a charnel house, chosen, unknowingly, to walk the path of the butcher, earned +1 taint, available only to blackguards, cultists, evil priests, and horrors. Gained access to dark magic, curses, and forbidden quests. Gained the ability to cast a minor curse of your choice. Restriction. You may not learn light magic or align with the light. The dark finds the light irritating. Accept the dark? Wait, hold on. Congratulations. You have slain an elite Tier 2 demon. Yes, again. This time, the light takes notice. You've earned +1 radiance for paladins, clerics, and other noble types. Gained access to light magic, healing cantrips, and divine quests. You may now study at light magic academies and shine with holy purpose. Restriction. No dark magic. The light hates it. Accept the light? Both sides wanted him. Ozzy rubbed his temples. Were they holding a recruitment drive? Congratulations. For heroism and death by fire, you've earned the title. Martyr. New skill. Fire resistant. 5% less damage from all fire sources. May upgrade this skill through your heritage at your own risk. Congratulations. For slaying a Tier 2 demon, you've earned Demon Slayer. Adds +5 damage per point of radiance against demons. How often was he going to fight a demon? Hopefully never again. And then, the part he was waiting for. A Tier 2 loot chest has appeared at the demon's location. Available to your party for the next 7 days. If untouched, it becomes public loot. Note, chest may currently be under a smoldering pile of roast meat. Ozzy sighed. All he wanted was a nap. Just as he closed his eyes. Hello, champion of light. Still haven't accepted your gift of radiance and truth. Click now. Yo, bro of the abyss. Claim your spot in Level 7's VIP suite. X-rated Ms. Pac-Man and free t-shirt if you act now. This was getting ridiculous. He pulled out a card and made a call. Meanwhile, in the real world, Steven, lead game designer, groggily answered his phone. Wally, it's been 1 hour and 13 minutes since I slept. You're wrong. You slept 1 hour and 14 minutes after your conference with Sandra. Steven groaned. Tell heaven and hell to postpone the apocalypse until I'm caffeinated. I tried. They said no. Mithras is summoning court. Steven sat up. Oh shit. In the in-game Supreme Court, Ozzy welcomed Elgebert Coppertwist, his gnomish lawyer. I've got 2 conflicting offers I can't decline, and now I'm getting spammed. The gnome adjusted his spectacles. Classic light versus dark recruitment loop. I'll file counterclaims. Won't cost you a copper. I might want to accept both. The gnome paused, smiled. Now that will cause a scene. 3 succubi in chainmail bikinis appeared. 3 angels in divine armor followed. They all screamed at once. You treacherous cur. You dark-hearted monster. Burn in the pits. You insufferable hypocrite. How dare you taint the light? Ozzy sipped his soda. Mithras entered, weary. Not today. Vacation tomorrow. What the hell happened? Coppertwist stepped forward. My client was offered 2 contracts he couldn't refuse simultaneously. Neither side included a no option. He is both annoyed and under contract with ACME, limiting his freedom. Mithras nodded. Fine. Ruling is as follows. Court ruling. Ozzy keeps +1 radiance and +1 taint. Gains both cantrips. May access both light and dark quests, if not barred by ACME. Both factions must cease contact unless Ozzy initiates. All such contracts must be reviewed for coercion retroactively since player introduction to the world. And Ozzy gets a phoenix feather. Let be done, Mithras said. And please don't annoy this mortal again. As the celestial entities disappeared, Ozzy turned to Elgebert. Thanks. That could have gone badly. The gnome beamed. Oh, it went great. I gained a level. Tier 7 now. Time to throw a party with my wives. Ozzy nodded. Glad someone is celebrating. Back at headquarters, Stephen leaned back. So, what was possible? Wally grinned. Over anything. Some angels once fought a war because the demons spelled apocalypse wrong. Stephen yawned. Great. I'm going back to bed. Un was enjoying himself. No meetings with corporate. No micromanagement. Just a cold beer, a roaring bonfire where the barn used to be, and no one kissing his ass. Even better, he finally had a straight talk with Billy and that Aussie fellow. For once, no flattery or chain of command groveling. Just a clear report on Momco's recent sabotage attempts, and even better, ideas on how to fight back. Ozzy had proposed a solid plan. Scrap the flimsy huts, go medieval. A stone barracks with thick outer walls and a secure courtyard in the middle. Defensible, fireproof, and built to last. Billy liked the sound of it. If it worked, they'd push the blueprint to other outposts. The real twist? Ozzy suggested the workers build it themselves, after hours. Extra labor for their own benefit. Smart incentive. Later, other workers joined them around the fire. They didn't treat Billy or Vern like bosses. Just made sure the beer flowed, then started talking. Vern got more out of their casual banter than he'd ever squeezed from a status report. Calves born per week. Profits from the tavern. Goblin sightings. Contract loopholes. Even sketch plans for the new structures. Billy gave a nod, and that was that. No forms, no meetings, just execution. It made Vern wonder, how the hell had Billy recruited a crew like this in less than an hour? Most managers assumed he'd pre-screen them. Vern knew otherwise. Billy had been just as surprised by the worker lottery as anyone else. Something about this smelled off. He made a mental note to do a background sweep on a few of them. That said, the contract worker project was a massive success. Back on Earth, these people were barely surviving in habitat blocks, eating synthetic mush and dying young. Here, they were healthy, strong, and pulling 16-hour shifts without complaint. They were faster now, too, more efficient. All ACME teams were doing fine. Brent didn't want fine. He wanted them to operate like Billy's unit. And he really wanted Billy to get that city opened up. Still, not bad for 2 weeks' work. 160 acres cleared and planted. Legion contract doubled in profits. 500,000 board feet of lumber milled. Quarry, tanning, leatherworking started. A tavern co-owned and profitable. 3 miles of road Caesar himself would salute. The demon torching half their assets? Just a hiccup. They'd recover. Vern chuckled quietly. Billy didn't even know he'd earned corporate build points for that pristine stretch of road. ACME Corporation has earned 30 build points for constructing 3 miles of road of the Emperor's Legions. Points can be redeemed for land and special structures. Yeah, Billy wouldn't mind laying a bit more road. By mid-morning, Ozzy felt better. He'd sat near Vern and Billy, listening in and nudging conversations with Ben, Raleigh, and Suzette to highlight everyone's work. Ben and Raleigh had mocked up quick charcoal sketches of the new layout. Vern was focused on city building. Billy was content to sip beer and nod approval. He wasn't a micromanager. Do the work. Show the results. That's all he asked. Ozzy stood, stretching. All right, everyone. Death hangover should be gone. Let's get back to it. Half the crew can go with Mr. Billy and Vern to survey the road's end. We'll go over building plans with the rest and start the new barn and smokehouse. Once they were out of earshot, Ozzy asked quietly, "So you all got points?" Suzette and Ben nodded. Raleigh grinned. 18 each. I like fights like that. Can we invite Timmy and his crew back for another? Suzette frowned. I don't trust them. They were from Momco. One of them fireballed you guys. Yeah. Raleigh shrugged, but we won. Ben nuked him. If he hadn't been a jerk, we'd have had to share the EP. And some of the others got a cut too. Jorges said he got 6 points. Let's talk to them, Ozzy said. We need to teach them how to use their points. Just keep it quiet around Billy. We signed an NDA. Don't mention the original skill list. Only what they can see now. Surprise. John and Cham had already figured it out. They'd fought a treant named Bad Apple. Just a rotten apple tree that got up and started tossing fruit. Their axes, used only for logging, worked as weapons, albeit clumsily. But they'd been gaining STR and DX from constant logging, and that helped. After 10 minutes of hacking, they split the tree in half. You have chopped down Bad Apple, a level 2 named Boss Trant. You have earned 2 core skill points, 200 EP in your class, and found a branch of ancient applewood. Turns out, they've been tree slaying all week. Elmer Elm, Sassy Frassy, and Rot Branch, John said, counting off. We got 15 points before the demon even showed up. Chad chimed in. I used some points for identification 1. Found out trants are weak to axes. STR help a lot too. I'm at 7 now. Suzette laughed. Well damn, guess we were all being secretive. Amy killed a walking boulder. Jorges boiled a fire elemental. Everyone compared points and discovered something. The more they had, the more skills they unlocked. Unique skills tied to their trades started popping up. Flesh to flame. Convert stamina into forge heat. Timber. Chop trees 15% faster per rank. Bonus damage versus wood-based enemies. Named bosses were easier than elites, but dropped cool trade items. They agreed to share info, openly moving forward. Ben began compiling notes for a proper skill reference. Then they got back to work. That night, the tavern buzzed. Suzette worked behind the bar. Ozzy, technically on duty, sipped a quiet ale. Everyone was still buzzing over their new skills. Ben was holding off on point spending. He wanted to chat with Matthias. Raleigh had someone he wanted to speak to too, though he was being cagey. Beat, he muttered. Needs sleep. He checked on the sheep and vanished into the pasture. Suzette and Ozzy closed up shop after midnight. Back in their room, Suzette flopped onto the bed. I've got things to tell you. But first, points. Otherwise, your brain will be stuck in min-max mode. She wasn't wrong. Ozzy got to work. He started with EP allocation. 800 EP into CON, raising it to 5. 200 EP into Street. Next, he bought the final level of Spirit of the Ox, raising con to 8 and letting him safely use all his strength. He raised the con cap to 7. Eventually, he could reach 10 with more work. Then he looked at damage skills. Melee damage was locked. You lack natural weapons. This skill may be available later via your heritage. Make worse decisions. That left one Fist of Iron, now showing detailed upgrade options. Rank 1, plus 10 damage, already owned. Rank 2, plus 10 damage. Rank 3, plus 10 damage plus ability to weapon block with hands. He took both new ranks. His fists glowed faintly. 10 points spent. He had 9 left, counting the one he'd saved. Don't mess around with Jim looked tempting, an intimidation aura. Rank 1 15-foot aura, 3 points. Rank 2 30-foot, 2 points. Rank 3 45-foot, 2 points. He bought rank 1. Could be useful for his bouncer side gig or against scary things. Then, for fun and safety, he grabbed Fish Breath 1. Hold breath 3x longer, 1 point. 5 points left. He grabbed 1 rank of Spirit of the Bear, raising STR to 10. That left him with 3 points for later. He dismissed the menu. All right, Susie, he said, turning to her. Your turn. Please tell me you did more than shop for dresses. She smirked. Wouldn't you like to know?
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
So, I died, very painfully, and it totally took me by surprise. I didn't expect my little cantrip to piss off the demons so much. I didn't know about the whole light versus dark war that goes on from time to time. Made a target of myself. Wait, I haven't told you about the whole light/dark thing yet, have I? Ozzy laughed. Nope, but trust me, I got filled in when it was my turn to die. Oh crap, did they try to recruit you too? The light was spamming me with messages, but eventually it stopped and I got a nice apology from them. And I got a free point of radiance out of it. That's why my solar arrow cantrip was doing more damage when I got back. Suzette raised her hand, and little needles of light formed on her fingertips. Very pretty. So back to your story? Just hit the high points, and don't tell me secrets. Hard to do. You pick up too many little clues and figure things out. I'm never playing Jeopardy with you again, Suzette glared at Ozzy. I'll take Suzette's secrets for 400 Alex. Don't you dare. Okay, basic story. I got whacked by a demon, showed up in the room we were in, got an option to go learn some stuff about magic, studied up, changed clothes, and came back. Good enough. Ozzy was curious about the rest, but wasn't about to push her. Hints about how magic worked in the game were his main interest. He knew players got magic, but only a couple of the workers had anything like it. Derek's ice magic could basically keep food cold with no attack skills, while the lazy druid could sort of charm animals, made fields of crops grow faster, and had a few herbal remedies. Nothing at all like the fireballs, holy smites, and lightning bolts that players got. Good enough. Now tell me what you learned about the magic system. You're obviously better at it. The bits of light swirled around her hand, then circled the top of her head like a crown. Oh, you wouldn't believe how much better. Before, I really just had a few stolen cantrips from the hedge wizard ability. To be a real mage, you need to have an affinity for that type of magic and some formal training. Without going to one of the magic colleges or having a mentor, you just sort of fumble around and figure out magic by trial and error and gain a lot of bad habits. Suzette didn't seem too unhappy as she said this. Normally how it works for a player is they choose a class with magic, allocate enough points into the magic section of their core skills, and finally, choose an affinity. Fire affinity gets you fire-based magic. Ice affinity lets you do cold-based magic, etc. Then they do a few intro quests to get into the local academy and learn their first spells. There's a ton of magical knowledge that they can either learn immediately or skip until later. Tier 1 spells are sort of point and yell something. But starting at Tier 2, they'll have to study up on theory more. Ritual magic, enchanting, tons of stuff to specialize in when you hit Tier 2. Ozzy scowled, so magic revolves around your class, your affinity, and schooling, 3 things that are hard as hell for us to get. Plus, we don't have core skills. Won't that hurt your magic? What are you using as a workaround, and what can the rest of us do? Mostly not do magic is my guess. Suzette didn't like that answer, but it was accurate. We can learn cantrips, stumble onto hidden things, and spend core skill points, which means killing bosses. Not easy. I got some hints, though, about the core skills. Bring up that list of things we can spend points on. There's a hint there. Core skill. Description. Cost. Plus attack core skill. Increase one of your core attack categories by 5 points. Note. Not applicable to your creature type. 1. Plus defense core skill. Increase one of your core attack categories by 5 points. Note. Not applicable to your creature type. 1. Plus harvest core skill. Increase one of your core attack categories by 5 points. Note. Not applicable to your creature type. 1. Plus craft core skill. Increase one of your core attack categories by 5 points. Note. Not applicable to your creature type. 1. My, mentor pointed me to this. It's not just that our core skills are set to 0. We don't even have them. He's frustratingly vague about it. Said I'd learn better figuring it out myself. But think about it. The skills we have work. You can butcher. I can dodge drunks. So, any skill that we gain works, but if we try to do something we don't have listed, suddenly we suck hard. I can throw a dart, but not a dagger. You chop an undead, but not a rat. Spells are going to be the same. We have to find ways to learn them, then expand on that. Ozzy nodded. He'd suspected as much. He'd watched some videos and read on the forums during the time he was dead. You could see that their system for skills was a lot different from what players could do. He also suspected some things might be better. He hadn't had time to look deeply into it, but it looked like contract workers had suspicious amounts of health and mana, and a boatload of stamina. That made sense, though, if you wanted your workers on the job for 100 hours a week. Nothing he did made him tired. Wait, you have a mentor? That's not fair. Here's poor Ozzy fumbling around in the dark, try to figure things out, and you're going on vacation for a week taking magic classes. Maybe I should join the secret club. Ozzy had zero intentions on joining any club, group, or secret cult. He preferred to adhere to the wisdom of Groucho Marx. I refuse to join any club that would have me as a member. Oh, don't fret, poor little Ozzy. Wise sorceress Suzette will be your mentor. I'll pass on any of the stuff I learned to you. Deal. Okay, deal. There were so many deals with Suzette that Ozzy regretted later, but it seemed to be a habit at this point in their friendship. Excellent. Then your lessons can get started. Suzette continued. Let's talk about cantrips first. Cantrips are the easiest spells. I think anyone can learn them if they can get access to them. The crafting system has a ton of them. I know cantrips to make grain sprout, beer ferment, and make bread rise. There are a lot more. We get them when we learn the appropriate subclass as a contract worker. I'm hoping that there might be other ways to get crafting cantrips. After we killed the wolf and spent those points, I got 3 cantrips from the hedge wizard ability. They cost 1 skill point each, but are random. You could blow a lot of points and get crap. One of mine, bugs, just gets me random insects that I can't control. Yuck. My best one is the solar arrow spell. It only does 20 points of damage to start. For each point of RAD you have, it increases both the damage and the casting cost. I can do 40 points with it now, which isn't bad, but still lower than what most archers will do with an arrow. My last cantrip, Runic Burst, is odd. It puts a ring of runes around me. I put mana into casting the cantrip, and then the mana drains into my next spell. So far, it's not even as good as casting Solar Arrow twice. But I think I could do a lot more once I know the right runes. I'm trying to learn the basics, especially the runes for enhancing Solar Arrow. The problem is rune lore and sigil crafting are another whole subject to study, but I'm barely up to basic spell casting. I had a whole week to study, but it feels like I could spend years. Ozzy leaned forward and his eyes narrowed. A week? You were gone a few minutes. Suzette smirked. Yeah, cool, isn't it? I got a free week's vacation. Turns out that the temporal vectors don't have to be parallel to avoid paradox, which is a paradox in and of itself. Ozzy groaned. He hated time travel shit in the science fiction stories he'd acted in. They made his brain hurt. The writers always came up with something that just didn't make sense to him. Suzette patted his head. Don't think about it too hard. Let's get back to cheating the system with magic. Ozzy liked cheating the system. Okay, how are we doing that? Show me your wisdom, oh great sorceress. Ozzy went to get another beer from the keg he had carried upstairs. It was half empty already. This was a downside to poison resistance and a high CON. It took a lot to get him drunk. Well, it's not much of a plan, but I think it can work. A person needs a spell associated with an affinity. This can be a cantrip. Then they need to use core skill points to buy the affinity that goes with that spell. That should open up raising the affinity using the spell they know in combat. After that, it's just a matter of us stealing or buying a book of spells. Since we don't have a magic-based class, we can't run off to a university like the players do. She leaned back. It was going on 2 a.m. She needed to be up early and brewing a dozen barrels tomorrow. Ozzy remembered something from yesterday. Didn't Jorges get some little fire ability from some gem he got off an elemental? Would that be enough to count as a spell? Suzette shrugged. Dunno. Maybe. Convince him to spend 5 points on getting fire affinity. Just think. Blacksmith with a blazing hammer of fire. How cool would that be? Right. I'll talk to him about it. Or send him to the wise sorceress of Sedgwick. Ozzy would have to remember to tell Raleigh and Ben to call her that. Which brings us to the subject of how you are spending your 18 new points. Going for an affinity with light magics. Ozzy had had enough of the light and dark for now, but he could definitely see Suzette flinging around magic, and she was off to a good start. Yes, going for that right now, it wasn't in the original list of aspects we could buy. I think you have to have a point in RAD first. So, I'm going with buying the light affinity and see where that takes me. Light of the world. You're highly aspect towards the light. You may train at the College of Light Magics. You may learn other spells gifted to you by quests, or those you can learn from ancient tomes. Your RAD has increased by +1. Cost. May 10th, 15 points. I'm going to gamble with more cantrips and put 5 points in a hedge wizard. 2 points go towards an extra plus 50 mana. I want the next 2 levels of that skill as well. 2 points is going towards fast talk. I think I'll have fun using that in the tavern. I have to stay ahead of the Timmies in the world. 3 points into raising the cap on my INT. 2 points into Prodigy. It lets me get another tertiary skill. I want something to raise my INT, so I'm going to go with teaching. The last 4 points can just sit for a while until I see how things go. Ozzy thought over her choices. That looks good. We don't know what we are doing. You experimenting with magic could be huge for us. He stood up and helped her to her feet, then bowed low. I bow to your wisdom, my mentor and priestess of teaching. Suzette acknowledged him with a hand placed on his head. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. A system message appeared. Congratulations. You have taken on a role of mentor to a student. You have learned the teaching skill. You have been acknowledged as a priestess of learning. You have the favor of Hermes, thrice blessed god of everything cool. You have earned the title priestess of the Golden Dawn. You have gained 100 EP in Hermetics. The pile of smoking debris, formerly known as the barn, wasn't done burning, but everyone was anxious to see if they could clear down to the loot chest. They had all got the notifications of the demon's death, so they weren't too worried about it still being a threat. Still, they were cautious as they started pulling half-burnt logs from the pile. Logs went to one side and got buckets of water thrown over them. The charcoal and still glowing coals were shoveled into large piles and covered with dirt under the watchful eye of Georges. A blacksmith couldn't have too much charcoal. The superheated chunks of wood burned quick in the open air once exposed, but would burn down a charcoal if covered up and no air allowed inside the pile. Surprisingly, they found whole sedge beast carcasses in the pile. They had expected that the meat would be burnt to cinders, but while the outer layer was a crispy black, the insides were simply well cooked and actually quite juicy. Ozzy found this out as he wrestled out a carcass and hauled it to the side. The outer layer cracked open and bubbling fat ran across his gloves and arms, burning him and leaving huge blisters. His gloves were soaked in the hot liquid, but had protected his hands somewhat. But his arms from the elbow to the wrist hurt like hell. At the same time, a wonderful odor leaked out of the carcass that had many people coming to investigate. You have been burnt. While not lethal, such burns are quite painful and can lead to further injury. You have taken 20 points of damage, reduced to 19 points of damage because of your resistance. You gained 1 EP in fire resistance. You gained 1 EP in CON. Ben poured a bucket of water over Ozzy. We need to get you some giant-sized tongs, or maybe a huge fork if you're going to be doing barbecue like this. Raleigh came up and sniffed Ozzy's arm, and then went over to the cooked sedge beast. Okay, folks, if you were wondering if it was Ozzy or the cow that was putting out that delectable smell, I'm pretty sure it's the cow. Someone give me a hand with it. I'm hungry. Chad and Raleigh each grabbed an end, protecting their hands with layers of burlap sacking. They put on top of Ozzy's butchering stump. Raleigh split the carcass down the middle, and a wave of delicious steam came out, exposing tender, slow-cooked, barbecued sedge beast. The job of cleaning up the burnt barn paused as everyone sat down to eat an impromptu early lunch. Ozzy pondered the fire resistance ability. As a tertiary ability, he'd have to burn himself in a similar way 49 more times to get to rank 1, which seemed painfully torturous. Then another 100 times for rank 2, and 200 times for rank 3. It seemed horrible to subject yourself to that many burns just to have less burns in the future. He wondered what the consequences of adding the skill to his heritage would be. So far, he'd gotten a little bigger and tougher. Suzette had pointed ears and was good-looking. Didn't seem like a bad thing at all so far. If it was a primary skill, it would go up 10 times as fast. Still painful, but maybe with the help of Raleigh to heal and the endurability, he could do it in a couple of months. The other option a message had hinted at was making it an INT-based skill. He pondered that one while he sat and chewed on some sedge beast. The stuff was delicious. The cooked stuff normally tasted like ass and was poisonous. Slow smoked for a couple of days made it barely edible and tough. But cooking the hell out of it made it into damn fine eating. What did it mean to make the skill INT-based? Other than the obvious one of which stat went up. Con-based abilities usually were tied into your physical body. INT-based skills were either puzzle-solving, languages, noticing things, or magic-based. Could this be some magic-based fire resistance? Based on what he and Suzette had discussed last night, he thought it might be. Ozzy felt his burns fading away and noticed Raleigh's hand on his shoulder. In a few seconds, the burnt skin was back to normal. He nodded his thanks, and Raleigh went off to get more food. It was a reminder that while the world was dangerous, they were getting more powerful. With that thought, he concentrated on the option for heritage, and a message appeared. You may move fire resistance, con, into your heritage. Fire resistance, con, will become a primary skill. If this option is taken, you may change fire resistance, con, to fire resistance, int. This will make the skill an active versus an inactive resistance. Change fire resistance, con, to a primary skill, y/n. Change fire resistance, con, to fire resistance, int, y/n. Ozzy clicked yes on both options and immediately felt small change. Looking at the hand holding his lunch, he saw his skin had darkened from his normal tan to a deeper red-brown. He walked over to the pit and put his hand over some glowing coals. There was an odd feeling in his head. He could sense the heat two ways. His hand felt the heat like you would expect, but he also got a sense of the heat in some other way. It was like he knew the fire was reaching out to burn him, and he could force it back. He grabbed a small coal and felt it trying to char his skin. He had to actively think about his hand not burning. After a few seconds, the coal he'd picked up turned black and cooled. You have gained the skill, Fire Resistance, int. This is an active skill requiring an effort of will. You may pit your will against fire, heat, and flames that try to burn you. This skill drains stamina equal to the amount of damage you negate with the skill. The max damage per attack that can be negated by this skill is 50 plus 50 additional per rank of the skill. You have taken 10 damage from fire. You have reduced this to 0 damage. You have used 10 stamina. You have gained 1 EP in fire resistance, int. You have gained 1 EP in int. Wow, this was both a hell of a lot better, but in some ways worse. The old skill was always on, but new one had to be actively concentrated on. Luckily, most people had, "Dear God, don't let me burn," as an innate reaction to fire and heat. There were some big advantages with this version. If he leveled it up to rank 5, it could theoretically absorb 300 points of damage. The next asshole who tossed a fireball at him was getting a surprise, and he was getting int EP instead of con. All in all, he was happy with it. Ozzy wondered how high he could level the skill today, working to clear this mess. Only one way to find out. He had Raleigh keep an eye on him. Hopefully, if he collapsed, Raleigh could heal him up enough for him to get out of the pit. After that, he moved into the charred pit, shoveling out piles of coals near the spot where he thought the demon had bit, and tossing the burn logs out by hand. It was slow, and he had to keep up his concentration, or he started taking damage. The rest of the workers just shook their heads and worked to keep up with him. 2 hours later, he had gained 100 EP in the skill, and burnt through most of his stamina, and finally uncovered the loot chest. It was still red hot with heat rolling off of it. "Raleigh, back me up here a bit. This might hurt some." He put his hands on the chest and tried to concentrate on not burning. You have taken 125 points of damage. You negate 100 points for the cost of 100 stamina. You gain 10 EP. Damn, still pretty hot. You have taken 125 points of damage. You negate 100 points for the cost of 100 stamina. You gain 10 EP. Oh crap, this is starting to hurt. He checked his stamina and saw he had about 700 points left. You have taken 125 points of damage. You negate 100 points for the cost of 100 stamina. You gain 10 EP. You have taken 125 points of damage. You negate 100 points for the cost of 100 stamina. You gain 10 EP. This may have been a poor idea, but Raleigh was near him and healing the damage. And at this point, he was pretty sure he'd be leaving a big chunk of his palms on the chest if he pulled away too fast. You have taken 125 points of damage. You negate 100 points for the cost of 100 stamina. You gain 10 EP. Just as his stamina was getting close to 0, the chest became cool, and his hands slid off. You have earned a total of 150 EP in fire resistance, int. Your skill has increased to level 2. Breathing a sigh of relief, he opened the loot chest. You have opened a Tier 2 loot chest. You receive the following: a necklace with 2 cheap red clay ornaments on it. Obviously junk. The ancient billhook of entwined fates. The fathoming orb of the 9 hells. 3 items appeared at Ozzy's feet. The first was a rusty chain link necklace with 2 clay balls for ornaments that looked like they detached. He could see a series of runes in the clay. Something for Suzette to figure out. The second was an ornate polearm of some sort. The shaft was 8 feet long and made of wood with a black lacquered finish. The head was made of steel with a bluish tint, nearly 2 feet long, and had way too many spikes and pieces. Shit, Raleigh. You have any idea how this thing is used? I've used a basic pole axe, but what's an Italian billhook? Raleigh looked at it and shrugged. Who cares? You needed something to pull barbecue out of the pit, and that looks perfect for it. But I can see a little bit about it with Identify. I think it counts as a wizard staff, so you can cast spells through it. Do we know any wizards that use pole arms? Oh, and you got a snow globe? The last object did indeed look like a snow globe. It was a round ball of glass about 3 inches in diameter. It was cold and nearly uncomfortable to hold, and showed a bleak scene of a frozen ship in swirling snow. Raleigh looked at it. Creepy. I think it only works if you go to hell. It tells you what level you are on and lets you speak infernal languages. Ozzy rolled his eyes. So, a weird paperweight. Okay, your turn. Boy, oh boy, I love loot chests. Raleigh cracked open the chest, looked inside, and was pelted with several small sacks of silver and copper, a large leather bag that smelled of pepper and garlic, and an ivory wand with a green dragon head on one end. Jackpot. Cash, a bag of spices, and a wand that shoots acid. Jorges, Chad, and the other folk that had gotten points from slaying the demon lined up. They all received varying amounts of copper and silver in small bags. The town was going to see an influx of shoppers tomorrow. Ben and Suzette went last. Ben had a huge book appear in his hands, along with a bag of several hundred copper and a purple wand. Raleigh identified the book as a tome of clear thought. It had a lock clasp with a key. Raleigh couldn't tell much about it beyond the name. Raleigh identified the wand as Wand of Berries. Creates 10d 10 fresh berries of a random variety 6 times a day. That's actually a damn nice item. Ben said, that's enough food to keep a couple of people alive and hydrated if you got stuck somewhere without any supplies. And I know a donkey that will love it. Suzette went last. A small silk sack fell into her outstretched hand. She dumped it out to find 2 silver rings and 9 gold pieces. Raleigh looked the rings over. I think you point the ring of the ram at people you don't like, and the feather falling ring will be handy if you fall off of cliffs. The chest abruptly disappeared. Everyone decided to take a few minutes to stash their loot and then get back to work. Ozzy gave Suzette the necklace and snow globe to look over. He kept a hold of the billhook. It actually did look sort of useful if you were doing a big pit barbecue, and gave him something to lean on. God, was he tired. He wanted a bath, food, and a lot of ale. He wasn't going to get any time soon. Moving up towards them were 3 Legion supply wagons, along with 2 officers on horses. Good day, citizens. I see that we arrived just in time for lunch. What smells so good? Squirmy was full. So full. His pet had been amazing. Every chance he had his pet had gorged himself on high mana foods. The dark mana was especially nourishing for him. And the battle, giving his pet access to his own abilities while he was using it as an incubator, had been the right choice. Not only was his pet adept at using his scything talons, but it had taken a special ability that synchronized with his own. This had led to a surprising message. Congratulations! By working together, you and your pet have unlocked the ability Symbiotic. This ability will allow you to share similar skills purchased with core skill points. Both you and your pet must buy this skill. Cost: May 10th, 15. Both he and his pet had earned 18 core skill points for defeating the stupid meat creature. Much thought would need to be put into how they spent these points. It helped that his pet was so agreeable to his suggestions. Raleigh was ready for a nap. The day had been fun, but a lot of work. He'd helped Ozzy clean up the barn, and then they'd grabbed the loot chest from the demon. He hid the 87 silver and 340 copper that he'd gotten from the chest. He'd learned long ago that you didn't keep money anywhere obvious. Then he'd gone to the kitchen and talked to Betty and Grania, presenting them with a big bag of rare spices. Their eyes just got bigger and bigger, and they'd immediately started talking about what to make. It was a great trade. He'd never really use it all, and now they were cooking him special meals any time he swung by. Not today, though. That barbecue had really filled him up. It was getting time to take a long nap. First, though, he wanted to spend his points. His character sheet was a bit lopsided. All of his skills were WIS-based except for weak poison resistance. He'd easily maxed that out with how much raw sedge beast he had been eating lately. With Squirmy's help, it tasted great and didn't really bother him. His EP had gone up with each bite. With all of his EP and WIS and CON, and now another 1,000 EP from killing the demon, which again had to go into WIS or CON, he was going to have to raise the cap on those stats. He tossed the full 1,000 EP to CON. Then he spent 2 points raising the cap on the 2 stats to 6 each. The extra EP flowed in, and both his WIS and Con went to rank 6. With his heritage bonuses, he was at 10 Con and 8 WIS. He was happy with that. Those were important stats for a pet breeder. Next, he took Symbiotic. This was a new skill he qualified for. He took the first level for 5 points. Hopefully that would help with keeping some of his Super Shepherd powers. Squirmy was loaning him mitigation, melee weapons, and disguise. Congratulations! By working together, you and your pet have unlocked the ability Symbiotic. This ability will allow you to share similar skills purchased with core skill points. Both you and your pet must buy this skill. Cost, May 10th, 15. Maybe you should take some of those skills? Good idea. Let's start with Melee Weapons 2 for 5 points. Symbiosis detected. Both you and your pet have the skill Melee Weapons 2. Skill upgraded to Melee Weapons 3. Your natural melee weapons will do plus 40 points of damage in combat. You have gained the primary skill, Scything Talents. This is a DX-based skill. Base attack chance is 30% plus 5% per point of DX and 10% per class level. Damage, 40 points plus 5 points per point of STR. You may make an attack with Scything Talons for each appendage used. Disguise would be good. Really hard to hide big Scything Talons coming out of your arms. Symbiosis detected. Both you and your pet have the skill Disguise. Cost of skill reduced to 2 CSP. Oh, so if you couldn't combine the skills, it might reduce the cost? Awesome. He was going to have some points left over after buying Mitigation 1. That was 2 core skill points. Symbiosis detected. Both you and your pet have the skill Mitigation 1. Skill upgraded to Mitigation 2. You negate 20 points from all attacks doing physical damage. This includes most elemental magical damage. 5 points left to spend. Probably good to get some STR to help with melee damage. So, 2 levels of Spirit of the Ox, and he could toss the last point into Night Vision. Symbiosis detected. Both you and your pet have the skill Night Vision. Cost is decreased to 1 CSP. Perfect. Glad that's done. So sleepy. Raleigh lay back in the nest of silk fibers he and Squirmy had made in their little hidey hole in the willows. It was very comfy. He pulled the matted silk around him like a blanket and went to sleep. Good night, Squirmy. Good night, Raleigh. System alert. The major quest, Help Squirmy Evolve, had advanced to Stage 2. System alert. The regional event, Blightfall, Pets for Everyone, has advanced to Stage 2. Suzette was up early the next day. She had to start several kegs of Blood Dark fermenting along with several other beers. Derek had pretty much turned over the work of brewing beer to her. He handled the tavern in the morning and afternoons. She ran it in the evenings with the help of Ozzy. Heading downstairs, the first thing she noticed was grain from one of the sacks of oats scattered about in the short hallway that connected the large room she brewed in with the storage area and the subcellar. Rats again. It seemed like once or twice a week, several large rats appeared, as if by magic, and she got a notification to offer a quest to players to take care of them. Her brewing area was a mess. A mash barrel of sprouted malt was overturned. A half-empty grain sack was on the floor, with 2 large rats chewing away at the oats. Screw quests. These things are dying right now. You have accepted the quest. Rats in the basement. Kill all the rats in the basement of the tavern and report back to Suzette, the lonely barmaid, for a reward. Damn, maybe she should do this every day. Skip the players. Wonder how much EP she could give herself. But first, she had to kill some rats. She cast Runic Burst, not bothering to try and use any specific runes. Ghostly sigils rotated around her, the inner set moving clockwise while another circle moved counterclockwise on the outside. The next second, a rat took a solar arrow in its backside. Giant Rat takes 80 points of damage. You have killed a giant rat level 1. You have gained 20 EP in RAD. Rats killed 1/3. One down. The other didn't notice its competitor for a moment, and that's all it took for another glowing arrow to kill it. Giant Rat takes 80 points of damage. You have killed a Giant Rat level 1. You have gained 20 EP in RAD. Rats killed 2 of 3. Looking at the 2 rats, they seemed a hell of a lot larger than the one she had seen down here before. She took a broom and shoved the corpses over to a corner and swept up the floor. Time to get some cats down here. Looking at the trail of grain to the sub-basement, she figured there must be one more down there. She was glad that Timmy had volunteered to clean the place out. There were still some old barrels stacked at the end, but all the broken ones and trash had been removed. Moving into the room, she looked around, but saw nothing. No, wait. One of the barrels at the end had been slid out from the wall a bit, and there was an empty grain sack in front of it. She took a couple of steps forward, trying to get a better look. Something furry and bipedal leaped out from behind the barrel and rushed at her. It wasn't a rat. It stood about 4 feet tall on crooked legs. She got a quick look at its sharp teeth and the rusty knife it held in one hand and wanted no part of it. She managed to get off one solar arrow before it was on top of her. Solar arrow deals 60 points of damage to Ratkin Warrior. Ratkin Warrior is blinded for 2 rounds. It swung at her wildly with the knife, cutting her forearm. The claws of the other hand also left marks. You are cut. Rusty knife does 20 points of damage after mitigation. You are slashed. Claws do 10 points of damage after mitigation. Cheating human. You have blinded me, but I will be victorious. I can smell your breath. I can hear the beating of your frightened heart. Suzette backed away from it, circling to her right to try and stay out of its reach. It seemed confused at first, but jumped more or less towards her, swinging the knife through air. She could hit it with her cantrip again, but that was sure to get her stabbed when it heard her casting the spell. Instead, she reached into the dart holder concealed under her shirt. Vin had made it for her after their ill-fated rabbit hunt. After moving again, she threw 2 darts at the hairy creature. Her first shot just missed, but the second took it in its pinkish snout. Dart misses Ratkin Warrior. Dart hits Ratkin Warrior for 10 points of damage. Ratkin Warrior is poisoned. Arg! My nose. My beautiful nose. I will eat your gizzards raw. The Ratkin lashed out in a fury, jumping around and slashing wildly. Suzette tried to keep out of its way, but it recovered from the cantrip's blindness effect and ran at her. As it tried to tackle her, she activated Barmaid's balance and sidestepped it. The knife raked along her side, injuring her again. Rusty knife cuts you for 40 points of damage. She launched another solar arrow at it, which hit but didn't blind. It seemed to be slowing down a bit. The Ratkin moved to the doorway and slammed the door shut. She realized that in trying to stay out of its reach, she'd let it maneuver her to the wrong side of the room. It started to advance on her, and she hit it again with solar arrow just as it rushed her. She failed to dodge, and it bore her to the floor. This was bad. It had weapons in each hand, and its teeth. She couldn't hold it off. It laughed her. Who is smart now? Who is winning? I can kill you at will. I give you a chance to surrender. You are feisty and will make a good breeder. She stopped struggling and whimpered. You win, master. I surrender. The Ratkin leaned back, pleased with itself. Of course you do. It was inevitable. She stabbed it in the leg with 3 darts loaded with poison and blocked the descending knife with her arm. Betrayal. Bad slave. The rat stabbed her 3 times in the arm with its knife. She stabbed it in the leg 3 times with darts. Finally, it quit moving and slumped. She pushed the foul-smelling and still living Ratkin off of her and got to her feet. Several kicks in the head ended it. You won. You have killed a Ratkin Warrior level 3. Increased EP for fighting a creature above your level and killing it in solo combat. You gain 50 EP in darts. You gain 50 EP in poisoning. You gain 50 EP in RAD. You gain 50 EP in DX. You have completed the quest. Rats in the basement. You gain increased favor with Suzette the lonely barmaid and a free flagon of ale. You are injured. Current health 230/600. She staggered up the stairs yelling for Ozzy. He took one look at her, picked her up, and ran for the alchemist's house. Luckily, they rose early Otherwise, he'd have kicked the door in. No one asked questions until they had the bleeding stopped and a healing potion into her. Then she told them about the fight, emphasizing that the creature had been fairly cunning in maneuvering her around. Ozzy added, "But stupid enough to be fooled by you at the end of the fight. Best to assume human intelligence, though." Aliasta nodded. "Correct. The Ratkin are close to humans in intelligence. Clever and cunning, but also more prone to errors and overconfidence. Treat them as a dangerous foe and don't underestimate them." Everyone in the room suddenly received a message. Quest. Rats in the Tavern Part 2 accept? Y/N. Those fiendish Ratkin are up to something. Find a clue as to where they are coming from and report back to Suzette the lonely barmaid for increased favor and a free ale. Suzette spread her hands. "Don't look at me. I have no idea what's going on." Adriana turned to Ozzy and Alistair. "I suggest you two strapping men go take a look. I'll stay here and tend to Suzette." No one saw Zephyr, bandolier of potions over her shoulder, head out the back door after accepting the quest. Centurion Marcus Aurelius waited until the supply wagons were a mile down the road from the village before he motioned for Legionnaire Gustavus to move up to where he was walking a dozen yards in front of the lead wagon. "I owe you an apology, Gustavus. I really hadn't thought that any village could supply this much meat to the Legion." Gustavus just nodded. "They certainly are taking their contract seriously, sir." "That they are." It was refreshing to talk to people dedicated to their work. The overseer, William, was actually quite eager to add the wheat and corn we need to his contract, probably hoping to look good in the eyes of his patron, Lord Vernon. While any overseer would do his patron's wishes and carry out his orders, it was a rare one that gladly took on extra work, most likely hoping for a large bonus at the holidays. The amount of bread it took to feed a legion was massive. Rowan Keep's force was only a fourth part of the century. Each of the keep's 25 soldiers would require a bushel of wheat each month. To the 300 bushels of wheat for the soldiers' diet was added an additional 200 more to feed couriers, traveling auxiliaries, plus keeping up a supply for emergencies. Roughly 2 crops a year and 10 acres of good land were required to grow that much grain, and already expanding their operation. The old barn wasn't even 3 weeks old, and they're putting up a new one already. Gustavus had seen workers hoisting beams he'd need 3 men to carry. I was quite surprised at how they went about it. As it was explained by the artisan running their slaughterhouse, the current barn and smokehouse were too small. Novel idea, just to burn them down and cure all the meat and hides at once. I'd heard of pit curing, but not seen it before. Gustavus agreed. Novel, but you can't argue with results. He supplied us with 100 well-cured carcasses that taste mighty fine and will store for a couple of years. The hide surprised me, though. The black-colored ones are hard as a rock. Good boot and strap leather. But the red hides are supple and smooth and tough. I tested to make sure the heat hadn't ruined them. They didn't tear and resisted cutting when I took my dagger to them. Have you seen that type of hide before? Oh, yes. It's highly sought after by officers in the South. Not only is it exceptional quality leather, but it has innate resistance to fire and rot. It's very hard to come by, though. Needs to come from animals grazing in a high mana area. Then needs to be cured with special ingredients and methods. Obviously, the artisan, Ozymandias, I think his name was, wouldn't divulge the method. He just shrugged when I asked and said, "Enough wood, enough heat." But I did distinctly smell the odor of dwarven whiskey. That may be one of the components. Gustavus ventured a comment. "I see that you asked him for 1,000 bushels of wheat and another of corn, plus an equal amount of groats for feeding horses. Should I arrange for more wagons to move the surplus out to other keeps?" Marcus considered. It was a fair question, and the answer would reveal things beyond the pay grade of common soldier. "How long have you been with the Emperor's Legion, Gustavus? How does it suit you?" 7 years and a bit, sir. Just signed up for another 7-year hitch. That pleased Marcus. This one was young enough he wouldn't be retiring soon, dedicated enough that he re-enlisted, and smart enough that he was already being assigned work beyond a common soldier. Good to hear. When we get back, upgrade your gear to Optio. I'm promoting you and moving you to my staff. Thank you, sir. I'm thinking that means you need some work done. It certainly does, Optio Gustavus. Duke Carl has asked for the northern border to be reinforced. I'll be staying on at Rowan and calling for the rest of my century. I already have an architect working on plans for the expansion. Your job is to source the local area for workers, stone, lumber, and anything else we need. So, let's hear your thoughts on that. Gustavus just nodded slightly. The reward in the Legion for a job well done was generally getting assigned a bigger job. But bigger jobs came with promotions. He'd suspected bigger jobs were coming. Road first, sir. You saw the quality of the road they were building north to their lumbering operations. I'll convince them to put a branch to the quarry they are starting and then expand at the 10 miles between Sedgwick and Rowan. Normally, you can only move heavily laden wagons about 5 months out of the year. With a proper road, we can work all year long with no problems resupplying from this area. Next, we'll need foundation stones and heavy beams. I'll work with the architect to get storerooms built first. Extra troops can be put in tents, but food needs proper storage. That's basics, but we'll need a lot more. What we can't get locally, I'll requisition from the Wolfsburg Supply Depot. Good. You have a handle on the job. Get started. Give me a short daily report each morning, but otherwise I'll leave you to your job. Marcus felt a bit of relief from the pressure he normally carried like a yoke on his shoulders. He'd be back and forth between Rowan and Wolfsburg this next month. Having someone to start the expansion would go a long way towards making his life easier. That is one ugly rat critter. Ozzy was looking at the dead ratkin in the tavern's basement. Alistair was looking at the thing's claws and knife. The claws would have a hard time getting through armor, and the knife is of shoddy workmanship. Dangerous, especially against a lone human. I'm sorry that Suzette was the one attacked, but actually better than Derek. I doubt he would have survived. Ozzy scowled. He hadn't thought of it that way. Clearing 10 rats was a joke quest for new players, but for the average person living in the village, this thing was a real threat. So were those big rats in the other room. I'm hauling these things out and feeding them to the pigs. Then we'll go through the whole basement, looking for a crack in the wall or some way these things get in. The pigs weren't picky. They ate nearly anything and got all the leftovers from the tavern and a lot of the garbage generated in the village. Derek added some grain now and then. Suzette always had the adventurers that completed the quest toss the rats to them. These were just bigger rats as far as he was concerned. He did help out by chopping all 3 corpses up a bit with his cleaver. As he started dumping the parts into their trough, the pigs came thundering out of the little covered pen where they slept. Squealing and pushing their snouts into the trough, they argued about who got the most. The argument was ended by the last arrival. The sow was 4 times bigger than the other pigs and probably weighed close to a half-ton. She looked at the rapidly emptying trough and the ratkin corpse Ozzy was about to cut up. She snorted and started pawing the ground. Ozzy agreed to a quick compromise. The sow got the whole ratkin thrown to her, and she didn't try to jump the fence. Both sides thought this was a good idea. Alistair was in the sub-basement looking at the stacked barrels in one corner. I think there is something behind these barrels. Ozzy got to work tossing them aside. A set of stairs started about 6 feet from the wall. Leading downward through an arch 10 feet down a short tunnel was a sturdy rectangular oak door measuring 7 feet by 5 feet. Ornate but rusty hinges held it in the stone frame. It was bound in iron with a latch, but no lock. Above the door was a piece of crystal the color of blood. Well, that explains things. You have a dungeon down here, Ozzy. Imagine that. Alistair took out a notebook and started sketching the stairs, door, and hinges. I'm going to take some notes for reference, but this seems to be a common entrance theme. No real clues as to the dungeon's nature. It could have almost anything inside. Oh, just a common dungeon. Alistair, why the fething hell do we have a dungeon in the basement, and how did it get here? Alistair shrugged. We may never know, or there may be a book inside that explains the origin. Dungeons don't always give answers for why they show up, but the most common reason is an excess of magic. It has to go somewhere, and often the world reacts by taking all that magic and creating a dungeon. Ozzy slammed his palm against his forehead, and Suzette said she saw a black river of dark mana pouring down the road, and the demon was using it to feed. Guess we know where the rest went. So what shall we do? Block it off. I would not advise that at all. Alistair put away his book and lit his pipe, sitting on one of the barrels. Dungeons form part of a cycle. The dungeon absorbs excess mana that gets pushed into the world from various places. Dark is the worst. Not only is it powerful, but it's thick and heavy. It's prone to flowing down and pooling underground until it creates a dungeon or other effect. If you block it off, it will just create another exit. But that's not the worst thing. A dungeon that fills completely can do worse things. The first is to burst and expel all the occupants out into the world. Imagine the fun of hundreds of giant rats and ratkins appearing all at once. Towns are killed this way, and the Emperor's Legion must clear the area and send in teams to weaken the dungeon. The dungeon can also evolve and get stronger. This is in some ways worse than a burst. After an evolution, it can fill again with mana. And when it bursts, even stronger creatures will venture out. This is how we think the powerful dungeons of legend came to be. They formed in out-of-the-way places, evolving over and over until they were ancient and terrible. Their surroundings full of creatures that had been cast out of the dungeon. Ozzy pondered that. Okay, how can we tell? Do we have to go in? We should, but a full group would be better. I can tell the state of the dungeon by putting my hand on the crystal on the door. Alistair walked down the stairs and, reaching up, put his hand on the crystal after removing his glove. Ozzy stood down the hall. At least he'd come expecting to have to fight rats. He was wearing his apron and heavy gloves over his normal clothes. And in one hand, he had his new barbecue tongs, ancient billhook of entwined fates, crafted by Alwyn Elfbane, a dark dwarven smith of deep iron. This weapon is of high quality and enchanted to channel spells. Any wizard may use it as a spell focus similar to a staff. Materials: deep iron, true silver, blackroot, finger bones, a wizard. Quality: ancient, plus 10% to hit, plus 10 damage. Applies both to melee attacks and spell attacks. Base chance to hit, 40%. Base damage 130 points. You are not yet skilled with this weapon. Practice or kill foes to gain basic skill. He'd brought it for poking in rat holes. Maybe this was just a bigger hole? Alistair said something very colorful and foul as Ozzy got a message about the dungeon. You have discovered the lair of the underrodent 99%. It's about to burst. We have to go in and buy some time for other adventurers to arrive. Alistair tossed his robe aside. Underneath, he wore light leather clothing that covered all of his skin. He slung a bandolier of potions around one shoulder, pulled down his goggles over his eyes, and pulled out a thick metal wand. Ready when you are. I have healing and stamina potions, of course, but also a nice assortment of explosions and buffs. Plus, I can supply quite a bit of damage with this blasting wand. Okay, let me go first. I can probably take a hit better than you. Ozzy went forward and grasped the handle. There was a bit of disorientation, and then he was at the start of a long hallway. A large hallway. The floor was of some dark slate, and the walls made of huge blocks of stone. The hallway was 12 foot high, and the ceiling was arched and at least 16 high. Of more immediate importance, 3 humanoid rats were standing in front of him. 2 more ratkin were laying on the ground, burned and moaning. None of them were looking at Ozzy, their attention taken up by something to the side. He used that to his advantage and tried to swing the heavy pole weapon sideways like an axe, using the sharpened edge of the curved bill. The polearm swung in a huge arc, taking the first rat totally by surprise, breaking its back and nearly cutting it in half. The other 2 turned, cursing him. More humans, more. Kill them. But before they or Ozzy could swing or move, a small red ball trailing sparks hit the ground and exploded. Ozzy stumbled back from the explosion. The 2 ratkin lying on the ground were flung and bounced. They wouldn't be getting back up. Shaking their heads to clear them, the 2 ratkin charged Ozzy. With his huge reach, he tried to chop down at one of them, but missed, embedding the weapon between 2 blocks of stone in the floor. The rat took advantage of the stuck weapon and ran up the haft at him. "Huh, and now you die, weaponless mankin." The rat brought its rusty sword down on Ozzy's unprotected head, slamming hard into his skull. It hurt, but not much. Looking at how the ratkin held the weapon, he realized it had used the flat and not the edge of the blade, its unsteady perch on the haft of his axe ruining its aim. Alistair had appeared near the door of the dungeon and tossed a vial at the other rat's feet. An explosion of spiderweb-like material engulfed it to its knees, immobilizing it. It tried to hack and tear at the webbing, but only succeeded in snaring both its arms. Ozzy let go of the axe with one hand and punched the rat standing on his pole arm in the place a human male was most vulnerable. It seemed to work for ratkin warriors as well. The ratkin fell off the weapon haft and curled into a ball, moaning in pain. Ozzy pulled his weapon out of the crack in the stone and brought it down on the creature, putting it out of its misery. Ozzy turned as he heard noise behind him. He saw a humanoid creature about 10 foot up the wall and wedged into a crevice in the rock. It quickly jumped down to the floor. Ozzy noticed the similarities to Alistair's outfit. Worn leather covering the entire body, goggles, and leather helmet. This person also sported a cloth mask worn over the lower face. Zephyr invites you to join her party. This means you will share all EP and treasure from the last battle. Y/N. Hi, Daddy. Aren't you proud? I killed 2 of them before you got here. She pulled down her face mask and smiled hopefully at him. Alistair was paralyzed for a moment before raising his voice. Proud? Of you sneaking off to a dungeon and killing Ratkin on your own? Ozzy crossed his arms, staying out of this conversation. Luckily, others had opinions to add. Che should be proud of whelpling. Sneaky is good. Asking a permission's silly. Still, you should slap her silly, bad girl for dropping bombs on poor welcoming committee sent to honor first humans in dungeon. Alistair sputtered at the captured ratkin. I won't slap my daughter for that. The rat pondered the statement. Oh, scared to get close. The young move quick and can be vicious at that age. As one of your oldest friends, I offer to help. Big one can hold her, and I slap while you watch. Is good plan you make. Zephyr looked at her father. See, Daddy, they are horrible. The dungeon was ready to burst. I had to come inside and start relieving the pressure. I saw that crevice and climbed up where I could ambush them with bombs. Alistair pointed to the doorway. You're going out of this dungeon right now. You didn't even ask me first? What have I said about this? Zephyr crossed her arms and turned her back on him. Depends. You tell me to always ask first. But when you get caught, you always tell Mom that it's better to beg forgiveness than ask permission. The rat thought this over. The whelpling is wise, is always better. And this rat is so sorry for this little misunderstanding. I begs all the forgiveness. You let me go now. We all go home. Tell funny stories, be friends forever. Zephyr nodded her head affirmative. See, Daddy? Even the stinking little rat that said he'd kill me and eat my toes thinks I did good. That's 2 votes to 1. Ozzy was quick to hold up his hands. Sorry, Alistair, staying neutral here. The rat suddenly managed to free his arm holding his sword and went to throw it at Alistair. I'll fool you. Zephyr brought her staff down on the creature's arm, breaking it and making it drop the sword. Ah, so sorry. Hit not again. We'll let you kill Bad Daddy, yes? Zephyr's next hit was to his head, and he slumped forward dead. Zephyr looked at her father, but he just kept smiling at her. He was actually serious. Taking a deep breath, Zephyr asked the others, Okay, status check. Is anyone injured? Ozzy shrugged. He hit me with the flat of the blade. Just bruised me for 10 points. No one injured. Then I need to know how prepared everyone is. I have a full load of concussion bombs, fire bombs, acid bombs, and a couple of sleep bombs. A dozen basic healing and mana potions, and 4 stamina potions, plus various buffs and utilities. I'll be second line, I guess, but if they come at me, I'm just defensive with my staff and covering for backline. I have full health and mana. Dad, Alistair pointed to his bandolier and pouch on his side. Full load of all my potions. My spatial inventory carries a good amount of advanced healing and mana potions, along with a few dozen utility of the standard sort. I have only a few small concussion bombs, as for some reason all of my stock seems to have been pilfered. Luckily, I had extra fire bombs to grab. I'll be backline. I don't use as much offense as Zephyr and can't throw as far as her staff sling. My health is full, as is mana and stamina. Ozzy was amused by the way the 2 alchemists went through their pre-dungeon checklist. Alistair had most likely done some adventuring at some point in his career and approached it professionally. Zephyr had obviously been trained in the same style. Ozzy spoke when Alistair was done. I'm full up on my stats except that 10 points I mentioned. I'll be trying to use this new weapon to attune to it, but if we run into more than a couple of rats, I'll start swinging with my fists. My cleavers only get used on meat, bone, or undead creatures. Zephyr looked at Ozzy. He had the size for a tank, but what he wore was barely leather armor. She was pretty worried about him getting torn up. But of the three of them, he was the obvious frontline fighter. She didn't like the whole party leader thing. It felt like a big weight of responsibility. Do you have any spells or special abilities, Ozzy? Suzette has some magic, and Raleigh is crazy when he goes full shepherd on people. Spells? Not really. A couple of cantrips, one light, one dark. I took one called Cleansing from the list of light magic cantrips. Saves a ton of time after work cleaning my clothes. Probably good to use it on wounds. For my curse, I took Weakness. It gives one creature a vulnerability to one attack form for a minute. Just an extra 10 points of damage per hit, but every bit helps. Not much else. I can see a bit in darkness, look menacing, and insult their mothers. Oh, and I'm a bit fire-resistant if I know I'm about to burn. This was starting to worry Zephyr. They really didn't have much of a party here. But Dad always stressed that you played with what you got, so they'd have to make do. Dad, give Ozzy 3 each of your advanced stamina and healing potions. Use those when you need them, Ozzy. Dad probably has a bunch. Ozzy took the 3 healing potions, but shook his head at the stamina. Keep those. I won't need them. Contract workers have a lot of stamina, and we regen fast. Zephyr frowned at that. Warriors always needed more stamina. You'll be using a lot, fighting. How much do you have at this point? Ozzy brought up his sheet. I just hit level 4. That upped my stamina to nearly 4,000, sitting at 3880. Health is at 1240. I can regain my stamina in about 2 hours if I'm eating and resting, and about 4 hours for health. That brought a surprised squeak out of Zephyr. Oh my god, how do you have that much? I got a little over 300 stamina and health at level 4. Alistair cleared his throat. Now, dear, it's generally rude to be asking someone for their abilities. Although, I am astounded by that stamina number. Suzette had said all the workers had traded a unique build that traded off many of your primary skills for increased statistics. This just confirms it. I think based on his physique that he also has a very high con and STR for his level. But since you were forthcoming with your own numbers, I'll let you know that at level 8, I now have over 600 health and stamina. That's considered high for a spellcaster. But of course, my build is a bit of hybrid. Alchemists tend to have high CON, and I have very high mental stats. I'm proud to say I have over 1,000 mana. That usually isn't achieved by most mages until the 3rd tier. Zephyr laughed. 1080 to be exact. He may have mentioned it to me or Mom a few times. Ozzy looked puzzled. Now that's interesting. I just hit 1040. Zephyr looked stunned, but Alistair was completely flabbergasted. 1040? But how? You're a butcher. What my rude father is trying to say is, my good sir, that is an impressive feat we don't mean to pry, but perhaps you could explain? Zephyr felt that as party leader, she should set a good example for her father. Ozzy looked at his sheet, then dismissed it. Not much to explain. Contract workers get 200 health, stamina, and mana at level 0, and it goes up 200 level. It comes in handy. We don't get tired, and we can work long shifts. If we get small injuries, it's no big deal. And some skills use cantrips. Suzette does all the brewing now for Derek. He can barely do 2 casts a day, and he's drained. She was going to do 10 this morning before we got sidetracked by rats. Alistair shook his head sadly. 30 years of studying, level 8, and a 17 intelligence, and I'm barely ahead of you by 40 mana, which you can only use for cantrips. Zephyr bounced up from where she was sitting. Come on, Daddy, let's go kill some rats. That will make you feel better. Moving down the large hallway, they all wondered at the architecture. The stones were quarried and shaped, but not polished like the interior of most buildings. Every 10 yards, there were half pillars on each wall, supporting elaborate arches. The ceiling in between them a couple of feet higher up and rougher, as it was hewn from solid stone. Each pillar had a brazier attached to it, throwing mostly shadows and not lighting even as far as the ceiling. Some of the stones seemed to have carvings on them, but they were so worn that you could never quite make them out. Now and then a gargoyle stared down from an arch or perched next to a sconce. Ozzy made a habit of tapping their heads with his weapon, just in case. After a couple 100 feet, they came to a crossroad. The muddy footprints of the ratkin turned right. They heard nothing from either direction. Both men looked at Zephyr. "You're making me pick? Fine, let's go to the left then, and see what we find besides rats." This corridor seemed almost identical to the first, but about 50 feet in, Ozzy felt a flagstone move under his foot and emit a telltale click sound. He yelled "trap" and started to step back, but before he could, the jaws of a steel trap shut on his leg, immobilizing him. Zephyr saw small cracks open in the stone and large centipedes poured out. "Dad, small firebombs, take the right." Ozzy couldn't stomp bugs with his right foot immobilized at an odd angle. He was trying vainly to swat them away with the billhook, but it was poorly suited to the task. The firebombs went off to either side of him. Forewarned, he took no damage and burned a bit of stamina. Most of the bugs were incinerated, but there had been dozens. Your party has killed 37 giant centipedes. You have been bitten 13 times for 13 points of physical damage and 59 poison damage. Zephyr yelled. Again on top of him, just you. Alistair put another firebomb at Ozzy's feet, and it exploded in flame. Your party has killed a total of 68 giant centipedes. You have taken another 3 points of physical damage and 10 points of poison damage. You gained 100 points of EP in your skill Resist Minor Poison and 100 EP in CON. The remainder of the insects died. Ozzy inspected the trap. Its jaws were blunt. It was meant to hold the victim and not break bones like a saw-toothed trap would. Taking hold of both sides, he was able to pull the jaws apart until he heard a loud snap as the mechanism was broken and the pressure was relieved. Zephyr looked at him wide-eyed. How strong was he? Are you all right? Take a healing potion. Is your leg okay? We can leave now if you're hurt too badly. Ozzy tested his weight on the foot. No, all good. Just let me quaff one of these little ones and use a cleanse to get rid of the soot. The bugs hurt, but the poison is pretty weak. Raleigh and I have been chowing down on sedgebees for a couple of weeks to raise our resistance. Alistair picked up a few of the least burnt centipedes and put them in a pouch. I suspect it could have been much worse. Without a resistance, these can cause substantial damage with each bite. That was a deadly trap for anyone without some protection from poison or an area of effect spell to clear the centipedes. Let's be very careful. They continued on down the passageway. Ozzy spent a lot of time tapping the area before him with his new weapon. The heavy head made it good for triggering the loose stones. They came upon 2 more of the same type of trap. At the first one, Ozzy triggered it with his weapon and backed up as the insects came from the walls. The 2 alchemists threw web bombs to either side of the wide passage to trap the bugs. Then they followed up with fire. The party took no damage. Alistair found a still-moving centipede in the webs. As I thought, these aren't alive, they are animated. It was hard to tell from the burnt ones. This one is unharmed, but long dead and still moving. The second trap had an occupant. The ratkin it held was barely alive. Its left leg was broken, and it was covered in bites, the skin turning black and puffy around each wound. It wasn't suffering, at least, being totally comatose. Zephyr moved near it. What do we think? Put it out of its misery? Or might that trigger more bugs? A good question. Let's leave it for now. But I'm wondering more and more what's down here. It has traps to take things more or less alive, and is animating insects. It could be nasty. If it looks overwhelming, we shouldn't be afraid to run. That's your job, group leader. I don't like being group leader anymore. They walked down the hallway that took first a left turn, then a right. At the last corner, they saw a pile of bodies, several dozen dead ratkin, 2 mummified lizards, and several dead and decrepit rabbits in a pile. Alistair stopped, took out a knife, and cut through the paper-thin skin to the decayed muscle. These had blood in them when they were killed. Though most things, Ozzy wasn't following his logic. So, not a vampire? Zephyr seemed to have some idea of what Alistair was getting at. Exactly, not a vampire. If these had been drained by a vampire or similar creature, there would be no blood. But these creatures were drained of their life force. The effect can look similar, a withered body being all that remains, but it's a different beast entirely. Possibly a necromancer of some sort. Ozzy made sure his cleavers were loose in their scabbards. Well, that would explain the animated bugs. Let's do this then. I doubt the minions go far to dump drained bodies. And true to his guess, the next turn in the hall revealed a large room, roughly 50 feet by 100 feet. At the end of it was a throne with what appeared to be a dead ratkin in a tattered red robe sitting on it. Rotted red draperies concealed alcoves, and a large ornate chest was sitting in front of the throne. All three people whispered at once. Trap. Alcoves have guards in them. Probably starts talking once we get halfway there. Zephyr considered. Ozzy, you'll need to go first. If it's a boss, taunt it or keep it talking. Daddy, when it looks like combat is starting, lead with a couple of your biggest bombs to the right side. I'll do the same. Let's take out half the guards if we can. Do you have a holy hand grenade? Aliasta nodded, then explained for Ozzy's sake. A minor explosive surrounded by powdered silver and vials of holy water. The holy water converts to steam, and any undead get a nasty surprise. Tends to disorient them. Zephyr was nervous, but try not to show it. Identify the boss as fast as you can, Dad. It shouldn't be higher than Tier 1. If it is, we run right away, tossing webbing behind us. Ozzy walked forward, bearing a bit to his left and avoiding the center of the room where carpet ran. Good odds it was a trap in the rug somewhere. Zephyr and Alistair moved a bit to either side, just inside the doorway, and then staying 30 foot behind Ozzy. When Ozzy got halfway across the room, the ratkin necromancer sat up. Its eyes glowed and its jaw worked comically. Having neither lips nor lungs, it seemed to be trying to fake talking. A disembodied voice boomed out. Oh, you thought yourselves sneaky clever to avoid my traps? But I have outsmarted you, worthless, no-tail humans. Ozzy wasn't terribly put off by not having a tail. But if the thing wanted to talk, it was time to start getting its attention. Bah, you got no plan? What are you going to do? Invade the village and take all the cheese? Yes, I mean and no. But yes, eventually. But first I will become powerful. The most powerful. I will suck out your lives and add them to my own, becoming bloated on power. And then I will conquer the world. And then the village. And then all the cheeses will be mine. Good plan. Ozzy noticed slight movement in the curtains. Bad plan. No cheese in the village. Lots of beer, though. We do not like stupid beer, stupid human. Ozzy feigned surprise. Really? But your mother loved beer. Lies. And more lies. My mother hated beer. She loved cheese. And me. Loved me more than all the others. Ozzy motioned with his hand to be ready. Not what I heard. I heard she put on army boots and a fake beard and went to a dwarf dance hall on Thursday nights. I heard she loved beer. Or maybe she just loved dwarves. You look a little short there, Bunky. Are you part dwarf, maybe? Probably don't even like cheese. You will die for that human. Mama didn't like wearing army boots. The curtains on the right and left were pushed back. On the right side, a trio of skeletal ratkin warriors in rotted armor appeared bearing spears. On the left, two skeletal rat shamans of some sort started making hand motions as power formed on their hands. They looked odd, with back-curving horns like some type of antelope. The necromancer on the throne simply laughed. Fooled you. A portcullis dropped in the entryway, blocking their retreat. Fooled you twice. Double fools you. Zephyr yelled, throw, and two explosives hit at the feet of the skeletal ratkin, followed by another two explosions only 2 seconds later. Ozzy charged the throne. His thrust went into the upper chest, caving it in. The head leaped in the air, then bobbled back and forth, held up by a large spring. Fooled you thrice. You lose. A mummified rat shaman leaped to the top of the throne from behind it. He wore ornate red robes trimmed in gold. A glowing rod made from greenish crystal was in one hand. From his skull, long back, curving horns grew, carved with runes and inset with bits of gems. A blast from the rod hit Ozzy at the same time the rays from the two shamans on the side hit him. It hurt. It hurt very badly, like something was being ripped out of him. You have been life drained for 2d 100 damage. You have lost 97 health. Your health is temporarily reduced by 97 points. Health 1143/1143. You have been life drained for 1d 100 damage. You have lost 31 health. Your health is temporarily reduced by 31 points. Health 1112/1112. You have been life drained for 1d 100 damage. You have lost 95 health. Your health is temporarily reduced by 95 points. Health 1048/1048. As the smoke from the explosions cleared, two of the skeletal ratkin from the right staggered forth, badly injured. The third had been reduced to parts and wasn't moving. Both staggered towards Ozzy. His taunts had worked, and all the hatred in the room was concentrated on him. Not necessarily a good thing. Alistair tried to get a look at the capering necromancer perched on the top of his throne. It was an elite at the top of Tier 1. Snick-Tick, Life Thief, Elite Level 5. Cunning, strong minions, health drain, mana drain, high evasion, speed, leaping, undead. Health 800 of 800. Mana 1,400 of 1,600. The boss looks like a strong Tier 1 elite. He'll be hard to pin down and has some drain abilities. This could be a problem. Drainers could endlessly fight as long as they had people to keep pulling health and mana from. As he watched, Ozzy drew his cleavers. The boss was in a tough place for him to reach, so instead, he turned on the skeletal warriors bearing down on him. Each broken bone pile took a hit, and each was reduced to pieces. These were the easiest of foes to deal with, only level 2. The rest were much harder. The boss took the opportunity to leap and skitter behind the two shamans. All three targeted Ozzy again. You have been life drained for 2d 100 damage. You have lost 140 health. Your health is temporarily reduced by 140 points. Health 1003/1003. You have been life drained for 1d 100 damage. You have lost 98 health. Your health is temporarily reduced by 98 points. Health 905/905. You have been life drained for 1d 100 damage. You have lost 58 health. Your health is temporarily reduced by 58 points. Health 847/847. Ozzy was in a hell of a lot of pain. This was far worse than the charnel demon. Still, better him taking the hits than Alistair or Zephyr. I got to admit, I'm starting to like you. But then I went to those same dances your mom did, and I was really fond of her. She'd do anything for a mug of beer. How about it, son? You see the family resemblance? Snick-Tick jumped up and down in rage. You know, no son, no resemblance. But you funny, I keep you around when dead. Stuff you full of eyeballs, make you into puppet. Furious at the large human, the necromancer didn't even see the 2 grenades thrown by the father/daughter team of battle alchemists. The first was, of course, a holy hand grenade. The explosive propellant did very little damage. Its job was to burst the blessed water held inside and turn it to a cloud of steam. At the same time, small silver shards were propelled everywhere, lodging into the bones and rotten flesh. The undead had their vision obscured, and the spells about to be cast were disrupted. This gave Ozzy a couple seconds of respite. We have to finish this fast. Throw fire, lots of fire. Don't worry about me. I think I can negate most of the damage from your firebombs. I'm going to start working on the end shaman. We hit it until it's dead. Otherwise, it will heal itself. They are whittling me away, and healing me won't help. Ozzy ran to the last shaman and started chopping with both cleavers. Hack Undead had been a good attack when he fought the rabbits. Since then, it had gotten much better. His STR was higher, and he even had earned some RAD to toss in the mix. His chance to hit in combat only had a base of 30%, equivalent to normal attacks made with mundane weapons. But his STR added 50%, and his level added another 40%, giving him an attack chance of 120% minus the monster's evasion. Rats dodge well, undead don't. His chance to miss the level 3 Ratkin Shamans was very small. STR and RAD added quite a bit to his damage. The base damage of 30 was increased to 85 points on the average hit, and he could attack twice with his cleavers. The shaman in front of him had started the day with 200 health. Any small damage it had taken in the fight had been healed when it cast its life drain spell at Ozzy. Undead Fear Holy Hand grenades for good reason. The Blessed Water had done 50 points to each of the undead, followed by the Silver doing another 10d6 for 39 damage, then a small Firebomb for 25 more. 86 health wasn't enough when 2 cleavers hacked through your neck and chest. The first shaman dropped. Fire grenades went off next, burning the undead again. The second shaman was in horrific shape, but Sniktik leaped to safety and avoided most of it. Back on top of his throne, he focused on his foes. It had been a long time since he'd had to work so hard. The minions who had been out scouting for prey were returning quickly. He just had to whittle these down and buy time. He'd start with the little one. He pointed his wand and unleashed another life drain, but the little one was quick. It must be part rat. It rolled forward to avoid his blast, but in doing so stepped on the carpet in the middle of the room. Snap! His clever trap held her, and he could now finish her off at any time. No more dodging. Zephyr heard the sound of the trap and cringed. The steel jaws closed on her leg. With only light leather armor, they did their job well. The small bone in her lower leg snapped, and the ends ground together. Her father heard her scream, causing the bomb he was throwing to miss and do no damage. The last shaman tagged Ozzy with its life drain, healing some of its wounds. It wasn't enough to save it from his cleavers a second later, but he was getting really torn up by these life drains. The minions had worn him down, and the boss was essentially unhurt. You have been life drained for 1d 100 damage. You have lost 97 health. Your health is temporarily reduced by 97 points. Health 750/750. After finishing the shaman, he turned to see the boss perched on its throne like some obscene vulture. Zephyr was drinking a healing potion and crying from the pain in her leg. Alistair was trying to get to her and shield her with his own body. He didn't get there in time. Sniktik easily hit her with his life drain, nearly killing her. At level 3, she barely had 250 health total, and some of that was already gone from the trap. She only had a handful of health left, and one more shot would kill her. Alistair pulled out a thick metal rod that he hadn't used before. Bracing himself, he prepared to shoot it at the necromancer. Sniktik was watching the human bring up the clumsy-looking wand and shaking his head. Never let your opponent know what you are doing. Concentration and cunning are what won the day. He prepared to dodge. Ozzy picked up the skull of a shaman he'd just killed and tossed it at Sniktik. The rat easily dodged, but it made him split his attention between Ozzy and Alistair. Alistair held out his arm and yelled, "Shazam!" Sniktik leaped, landing on the opposite side of the room. Two things were unfortunate about this spot. The first was the firebomb Zephyr had casually rolled over in that direction a couple of seconds before. The second was that Alistair didn't fire the concussion rod when he yelled. Now he did fire, at the area where the necromancer was about to land. The concussion rod let out a large blast that covered a 10-foot diameter circle. It also set off the firebomb. The rat was thrown back against the wall and fell to the floor. Ozzy took 2 steps and jumped, coming down on top of him. Sniktik, Life Thief, Elite Level 5, Cunning, Strong Minions, Health Drain, Mana Drain, High Evasion, Speed, Leaping, Undead. Health 582 of 800. Mana 900 of 1,600. Now was a race to see who could outdamage the other guy. Ozzy had to stay on top of Sniktik to keep him pinned, but that meant Sniktik couldn't miss with a life drain. Zephyr and Alistair took Ozzy at his word and started throwing firebomb after firebomb. Each one did a bit of damage from the concussion, but he was somehow negating most of the fire damage. Ozzy wasn't worried about his stamina. The rat would kill him long before it ran out. He did what he could to make his shots count. Weaken, asshole. Ozzy hacked away, ignoring notices from the game. He'd either die or he wouldn't. He concentrated on what he did best, hack flesh and chop bone. Ozzy hacked, the rat burned, and then healed as he drained Ozzy. The cycle repeated several times. Sniktik heard the clatter of bone and metal coming down the hallway. A veritable army of undead ratkin and other humanoids had come around the last corner to charge into the room. This was good news for the great Sniktik, mightiest of necromancers. He only had 2 spells left and was slowly losing this fight. The cheating human had far too much health. Snicktick hated cheaters. And now you will die. My minions approach. My cunning plan is revealed. He threw one of his last spells at Ozzy. Ozzy felt very, very bad. His arms were sluggish and looked thin with loose skin hanging down. A tooth was loose in his mouth and fell out. You have been life drained for 2d 100 damage. You have lost 150 health. Your health is temporarily reduced by 150 points. Health 109,109. But he smiled at the sight of the approaching undead horde. Zephyr yelled out, "Hey, half-dwarf. You left the portcullis down. Idiot, they can't get in." "What?" "And oh, stupid minions, the lever." Ozzy's cleavers came down on his skull, splitting it and doing enough damage to take away Snicktick's last 85 points of health. You have slain Snicktick, a level 5 elite ratkin necromancer. Each party member receives 500 EP towards leveling their class. They also receive 500 EP that may be applied to any stat that was used during this fight. Zephyr, DEXINT, CHRAGI. Alistair, DEXINTWIS. Ozzy, STR Khan, RADINT Core. Zephyr has gained access to the leadership skill. Each party member receives a number of core skill points based on their level. Zephyr, 3 Ozzy, 5 Alistair 1. A Tier 1 loot chest is waiting for you at the dungeon entrance. The world was spinning for Ozzy. He slumped against the wall. He heard the undead pounding at the gate and saw Zephyr crying in pain as Alistair tried to disable the trap holding her. It wasn't a good time to nap, but he wasn't being given a choice. Suzette awoke, at first disoriented to be waking up in a strange bed. Seeing the bandages on her arms reminded her of the events earlier in the day. She needed to get moving and see what the hell is going on. She was only wearing bandages and a nightgown. Her own clothes had been hauled off to the wash, but she spied a pile of clothes on a chair with her shoes nearby. Thick cotton paints and a simple tunic were laid out. She blessed Adriana for leaving her clothes that were easy to put on. As she was dressing, her hostess came in the door with a loaf of bread and some tea. "I know you're in a hurry, but eat something and drink the tea. Then take this potion to finish the healing. It won't work as well unless you get some food in you to help things along." Munching the thick slices of fresh bread, Suzette mumbled, "Has something happened?" Adriana looked like a worried mother, trying to project calm and utterly failing. "Maybe, not sure." Ozzy and Alistair went over to the tavern, but they haven't come back yet. And it's a pretty good guess my daughter went with them. Went with them to the basement. No, into the dungeon that's now in the tavern sub-basement. I went over while you slept. There's a note there for you. Suzette downed the potion and grabbed another piece of bread. "Right. I'm heading over. Is Derek over there?" "Oh, he's over there all right. When did he start drinking heavily before noon?" Equals 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 equals. Derek was sort of sitting at a table. There were a couple empty flagons and an open bottle of Hibernian brandy on the table. He was stacking up 6 shot glasses and pouring brandy into a 7th. Great, something else to figure out. But not right now. Suzette ran down the stairs and then into the sub-basement. Sure enough, there was a staircase leading down to what looked like your classic dungeon door. A note was pinned to it. Alistair says the dungeon is about to burst from too much mana or mobs or something. That's a bad thing. The two of us are going in to kill a few rats. Be back in a bit. Ozzy. No mention of Zephyr. So, she wasn't with them when they went in. Of course, she might have already gone in. Would she? Of course, she would have. Daddy was an adventurer once, and she's definitely a daddy's girl. Best to assume Zephyr went in and was with them. Rushing in on her own wouldn't help. This all started when she had to fight one ratkin on her own. A dungeon of them was beyond her. Meanwhile, time to figure out what is up with her boss trying to drain the stock of booze. Derek was still there. Another dirty shot glass had joined the pile, and he had just poured another. Suzette picked up the shot glass of brandy and knocked it back down her throat and took away the bottle from him. More of this won't fix the problem. What's going on? Derek looked at her. He was seriously lacking in sleep and had a couple days' growth of beard. Come to think of it, he'd been a little rough around the edges yesterday when she came in for the night shift. Rats. Stupid rats. I hate rats. And I hate Billy. And contracts. Give me back my bottle. Underneath the empty beer flagons lay a stained, 2-page contract with the ACME logo on it. She cleaned up the table, wiped beer off the contract, and took a look. This is the contract you signed when you sold Billy half the tavern? Derek nodded. Never should have done it. Worse off now than I was. Why are you worse off than you were? What happened, Derek? Derek pounded his fist on the table for emphasis. Rats happened. That damned Quest every day telling me I had rats in the tavern. Evelyn won't set foot in the place with rats in the basement. And that was before the big ones showed up. Suzette sighed. She put 2 shot glasses out. She put a few drops in Derek's and refilled hers, then corked the bottle. Okay, why don't you start at the beginning and tell me the whole story? Encouraged by the token offering of brandy, Derek told his story. Evelyn was the daughter of a tavern keeper over in Dalesford, about 30 miles south of Sedgwick. Derek had grown up there and wanted to court her, but her father refused until he showed he could run a tavern on his own. Tavern keeping was hard work, and he needed a son-in-law to take over the family business. Derek has sold everything he had and bought a rundown tavern here in Sedgwick. Most of the profits went to paying off the loan, but he was free and clear after 5 years. He asked again to marry her and hoped they could make a life here in Sedgwick. But someone else was also after his sweet Evelyn as well, and she was torn between them. Her daddy was more pragmatic. Whoever came up with a dowry of 500 gold got Evelyn and was heir to the family tavern. And when Billy came round to see if you were interested in selling, you asked for 500 gold. Suzette was scanning the contract, looking for the trap she knew was in here. Yep, we dickered a bit. Billy needed a tavern to feed his workers. I needed gold. I asked for 2,000. He offered 500 for half. We eventually settled on that, and I rode down to Dalesford and paid her dowry. The money will go into the tavern there. In a way, it will come back to me eventually. Or would have. I really should have read the contract more and thought about it, but I was in a hurry. The contract had some other stipulations. ACME wanted to make sure the tavern was a success, and we had to charge cash. Billy didn't want to run a tavern. He just wanted to make sure he had control of one. Part of the contract stipulates I'm responsible keeping the tavern profitable and have to run it. You didn't charge cash? I mean, I do, except for the regulars that you let run a tab. Derek stared at his empty shot glass. Yep, and that's a problem. See, in a small town, there isn't a lot of cash. A farmer has a lot of taters and carrots, not copper pieces. I need food for the tavern, so the locals usually pay in food, hay, eggs, empty barrels, or anything else I can use. I should have thought about that more. We agreed to a simple profit arrangement. ACME takes 20%, and I keep the rest and pay the bills. Suzette found that clause. ACME will be paid a share of profits each month equal to 20% of the value of all food and beverages dispensed by the tavern. Payment to be in coin of the realm, regardless of how food and beverages were paid for. Suzette was trying to think about the tavern's costs and coming to a bad conclusion based on how much non-cash business was done. I take it that leaves you a bit cash poor? Yep, and I could work that out given time. Just need to make sure I've taken enough cash sales to cover Acme's cut. Running the tavern didn't seem like a big deal. Evelyn and I could work here for 5 years, train a manager, and then head back to Dalesford. The contract says the tavern has to stay open, or I owe ACME the 500 gold back for breach of contract. But now she won't come. Suzette was getting the picture. Because of the rat. Derek let out a long sigh. Oh yes, rats. She has a nasty fear of rats. And worse, her daddy got word of stuff going on up here. Demons running around burning things, rats in the basement, adventurers coming in for quests. He's not going to let her move up here and marry a tavern keeper in a cursed village. Can't blame him, really. I'm scared to death most days. Don't even want to go down into my own basement. Shit. So, she's not coming. You're stuck here. Daddy has the 500 gold already. He'll repay you someday. Meanwhile, the other guy also pays 500 and gets Evelyn. You're stuck here, heartbroken. and I get an alcoholic for a boss. Yep, this situation sucks. I need to go talk to Billy. Billy was at the end of the road by the creepy rune-covered rocks. Vern was arguing with him. The new gal, Layla, was standing nearby looking bored. Her crew of workers had come into Sedgwick yesterday. They were milling around and didn't look happy. At least there wasn't dark mana leaking out of the ruins and down the road anymore. She saw that all the excess would have been neatly piled up in a long line in front of the road and out to the tree line on either side. She could sense a large pool of dark mana behind it, held back like water in a dam. A ramp led up and over the 4-foot-high pile of timbers. It's not going to work, Vern. We already tried it with 5. Billy was pacing back and forth occasionally, trying to look at the runestones. Vern was adamant about his idea. Well, maybe 7 will work. That's a magic number, I think. Layla, motivate your people. Layla had a talk and picked out 7 of her workers. They lined up and, on her signal, ran up the ramp and sprinted for the city, trying to spread out. One by one, the huge standing stones lit up and lightning arced down from the sky to incinerate the sprinters. Except the last. After 6 displays of thunder and lightning, one person was left running. He went about 40 yards. Utterly surprised, he tossed his arms in the air, shouting, "I'm alive." Yes. Boom. The 7th stroke of lightning arrived. Vern yelled at Billy C., making headway. We just need more workers all at once. Oh boy, Suzette did not want in the middle of this. She was not going to let anyone know about being able to see mana and her meager knowledge of runes. Nope, not her job, which reminded her of why she was here. Mr. Billy got a moment. Need to talk to you about this contract with Derek. Billy looked at her, then put on a weak smile. Sorry, Suzette. I'm busy with important stuff. Layla, explain it to her. Layla was only happy to put the little witch in her place. Did Derek send you up here? You have to quit letting men run your life, honey. He's just using you as cannon fodder. He already came up here to talk once. And just like last time, the answer is no. He signed a contract. If he didn't like what it said, he should have gotten a better contract. You work for ACME Deary, so just shut up and walk your little ass back down to the tavern. Derek can either keep doing the job he's supposed to do, default and face the consequences, or get some sucker to buy him out and take over. Suzette tried to be calm. Look, I'm sure there must be something. Layla smiled. Stop. Nothing you say matters. You want to help him? Just tell Derek to start renting you out by the hour. I know you love the attention, and he might as well get something for you shaking your ass in front of every man that comes in. Calm left. It ran and didn't look back. Oh, you have a spider on you. Heavens, a lot of them. Let me brush those off. Eek, you must have a nest of them in your clothes. Bugs began pouring out of Layla's clothes as she screamed and danced around, swatting at them. Suzette stepped back, covering her mouth in horror. More and more insects poured out. Layla began taking off her clothes, stripping down until she was nearly naked. She was covered in insects and kept slapping at her skin that was rapidly becoming covered in welts. Everyone stared. No one knew what to say. Layla screamed in rage and started running back towards the village. Billy walked over to Suzette, eyeing the clothes strewn around and covered with creepy crawlies. Nest of insects? Must have been. She should be more careful. That was really frightening. Billy chose his next words carefully. Look, Suzette, I appreciate you trying to help Derek. I understand he's in some kind of bind, but just let him work it out. He'll figure out a way to make sure ACME gets its promised cut. As long as that happens and the tavern feeds the workers, I'm happy. That contract can't be changed at this point. It's registered in the game, and at Acme HQ, nothing I or Vern can do about it. You do a good job at the tavern. You're practically running it now. You have nothing to worry about, and your job is secure. Maybe avoid Layla, though. Suzette nodded. Then she smiled, waved at what was left of the workers, and then at Vern. Okay, Billy, thanks for trying. I'm going to go get lunch ready for everyone. As she walked back, she reread the contract again. Getting back to the tavern, she was happy to see Derek being forced to eat a sandwich by Grania. I have an idea, Derek. Sell me the tavern. Derek took a second to think on that. Sell you the tavern? But you don't have any money. I know none of you workers do. Suzette laid out her points. Doesn't matter. You want to leave, but can't unless someone else takes over the tavern. I can take it over. You run off to Dalesford and get married. If she prefers you to the other guy, your father-in-law will be happy to have you work that tavern until he retires. And you take my tavern here for free." Suzette shook her head. "Nope, I won't cheat you. I'm here for 5 years already. I'll run the tavern and pay you 10 gold a month starting today. That's 600 gold over 5 years. I think that's fair considering you sold half for 500 and now has a rat problem." Grania walked back to the kitchen and came out with Betty while Derek considered. She brought a blank page torn from the back of a cookbook and a quill and ink. "She's offering you a good deal, Derek. Go marry that little gal before she gets snatched up." Derek made his decision. "You're right. If someone writes out the deed of sale, I'll sign it. My hands aren't too steady right now." Derek was on his way in the next hour. Suzette sat down with Grania and Betty to talk about ways to run things better. Grania had been living in Sedgwick all her life and was eager to take on more of a challenge. Betty was happy to take over more of the cooking. Suzette insisted on working out a way to share profits if things went well. They had just finished when the start of the evening crowd came in. The first was Sir Timothy with a following of a dozen adventurers. He saw Suzette and quick bow. "We have returned, fair maiden. Let's start with a couple of rounds of blood dark." The other person was an older man wearing a dapper-looking suit of gray cloth and a white shirt. He took off his coat and derby hat and sat at the bar, looking at the kegs of ale. Suzette got to him after serving Timothy and his entourage. They emptied out a keg of blood dark fast. She really had to do some brewing and build up her stock. The gentleman asked for a small flagon of each of the brews Derek had traditionally made himself. He made small comments, asked for the names of the Alesh or beers, and wrote in a small book. Eventually, he asked for a small glass of bludgeon brew and one of blood dark. He didn't seem to be very drunk as he finished off the last of the beer. Suzette asked him, "Figuring out what you like? Need anything else? It's a hobby of mine, combined with my job. So many small taverns, each with their own distinctive brews. Quite enjoyable. Glad you enjoy it. And the job? Oh, not so enjoyable. I'm an inspector for bludgeon brew. It has a distinctive taste that the company wants replicated both here in Genesis as well as in the other world. I'm happy to say your version is as bland and unappealing as it is supposed to be. However, we need to talk about this blood dark. A nice flavor, by the way. Quite dark with a good head. It has some nice flavors in it that I'm not quite placing, but I quite like it. But officially, we have a problem as you are guilty of several types of copyright infringement and have voided the agreement we have with this tavern and tangentially with the ACME Corporation." Ozzy came to with a pounding headache. No, scratch that, everything ached. His mouth tasted horrible, like something foul had crawled into it and died. His eyesight was hazy and he felt weak and achy. It took a few seconds to realize what else was wrong. It was quiet. He sat up and looked around. 2 alchemical lights were glowing in the room, probably provided by Alistair. The alchemist was sitting with his back to the wall, lightly dozing. Zephyr was stretched out next to him. One leg was splinted and wrapped in bandages. The trap that had broken her leg was disassembled somehow. In front of Ozzy were several potions with labels next to some empties. He picked up a thick white potion that smelled bad. It had "Drink me first" on the label. He drank it down and found out why his mouth tasted so bad. The other 2 potions were standard health potions. Downing these, he immediately felt better. Checking his status, he saw that he was now at 657 health. A lot better than he had been at the end of the fight. He'd been worried the life drain effects might have been permanent. Alistair woke as Ozzy stood up. "Good, you look better. Before you complain, yes, the restorative potions taste horrible, but they are one of the only ways to quickly restore your lost vitality. The draining spell these creatures used is quite potent. They steal not only your current health, but also lower your maximum." "How's Zephyr?" Alistair put his hand on her forehead. "No fever, and with the treatment I gave her I'm fairly certain she will heal without contracting a fever or rot. She mainly has a broken leg and will not be walking for a week or 2. Potions have restored her health. Getting a bit of rest and some food helps with the healing process, but it would be best to get her home soon. I think this is quite enough adventure for today." Ozzy could only agree. They did a quick search of the area and came up with several handfuls of copper, along with finding a lever behind the throne that they assumed would raise the portcullis. Alistair put the green crystal rod in his backpack for later. Ozzy grabbed the boss's skull. He should be able to patch it up from where the last hit split it. It made an impressive-looking trophy with the rune-carved horns. Before they could leave, though, they first had some undead that needed to be handled. The skeletons couldn't get in, but 24 was too much to fight with just 2 of them, injured as they were. Ozzy picked up his polearm and walked over to the gate. The undead nearby immediately pressed up against the gate again. Ozzy thrust the heavy billhook through the vertical bars and broke ribs on one of the skeletons. After 3 thrusts, he decided to try vertical chaps like an axe. This worked much better. He fell into a rhythm. Chop, chop, chop. Crunch. Then repeat and take out the next one. Eventually, the hallway was clear. He also got a notification. You have diligently practiced with a billhook, killing foes and learning its ways. You have learned the weapon skill, billhook at level 0. This is a tertiary skill for you. Having the weapon skill, billhook allows you to attune to the ancient billhook of entwined fates. Y/N. Ozzy hit Y, and immediately the weapon felt lighter and more balanced in his hands. He also had a feeling he could cast spells through it, if he ever got a spell, that is. When the hallway was clear, they pulled the lever and raised the portcullis. Ozzy went to carry Zephyr, but her father lifted her. I can handle her weight. That leaves you to handle anything, and I can set her down if needed. Zephyr stirred and saw they were heading back. This is embarrassing being packed out of my first dungeon. Alistair disagreed. Far better to be packed out with a broken leg than in a body bag. But to save your wounded pride, maybe you could hobble through the last door on your own? The trip back was uneventful, except for a stop at the Ratkin in a trap. Zephyr looked at him. She knew how horrible that trap felt. Can we free him? They are nasty creatures, but it seems wrong to just leave him to suffer. Neither Alistair nor Ozzy felt bloodthirsty enough to kill the trapped creature. Ozzy broke the trap with his hands, and they poured a poison cure and healing potion on him. The Ratkin awoke and scuttled into a corner with a frightened squeak. Ozzy noticed his emaciated state. Who knew how long he was in that trap? Ozzy tossed down a water flask and a bag filled with barbecued sedge beast. There you go, fella. You're healed up, and you can eat my lunch. But after that, you're on your own. The Ratkin nodded. He grabbed the food and water, quickly starting to eat. Zephyr and her party made it back to the entrance, where her father let her hop through the door on her own power. A crowd of people was thundering down the stairs to greet them. Suzette looked at the man in front of her who, after making his accusations, calmly went back to sipping his beer. Well, that does sound serious, but I'm sure we can work things out. She stuck out her hand and smiled. Hi, I'm Suzette. I just purchased half the tavern about an hour ago. Walgard, Thaddeus Walgard, connoisseur of fine and not so fine brewed drinks, an inspector for Bludgeon Brew. He took her hand and smiled back. He had taken one look at her and assumed she was some piece of fluff hired to bring up sales of beer. Nothing wrong with that. And with her smile, he assumed that this little tavern had some very good sales. A fact that the 24 adventurers in the tavern seemed to prove. He noted they had all asked for Blood Dark and were about to start their 3rd round. He didn't blame them. It was the best beer in the tavern. We shall have to see about that. First of all, I need to know if this is just a label you attach to a fine home brew, or did you indeed alter the recipe for official Bludgeon Brew? Suzette couldn't see an advantage in lying. Oh, it's the blood recipe. I just add a bit to it. She saw Ben walking in the door, waving to her. Oh, look, Ben is here. He can spell me at the bar while we go look at the recipe really quick. Right, Ben? Thanks. Ben shrugged and put on an apron. At least it meant his beer was free. Okay, who needs what? 24 voices yelled, Blood Dark. Suzette took Thaddeus into her brewing room. I'm using some local plants in the mix. This is sedgegrass seeds. It grows wild all over the place. I use a mix of 50-50 sedge to groats, also grown locally. Let me get a batch germinating. I put in a bit of extra mana to make them grow quickly. Thaddeus was taking notes in his journal as she worked. This was an interesting malt mixture. He timed her cantrip. It seemed like an excessive amount of mana. How much mana are you putting into that spell, may I ask? I use 100 mana to germinate the malt. That's about 4 times normal. Sedge grass has a tendency to soak up mana easily. The seeds are already soaking a lot of dark mana and will absorb more, so the cantrip needs a lot of power to it. How long will this take to grow? Tomorrow morning, I assume. Suzette laughed. Oh no, this is quick. I'll be ready to roast the malt in about 20 minutes. Can you keep a watch on it? I have to check the storage area. Running to the sub-basement, she found it unchanged, except for the glowing crystal about the door. Touching it, she got a message. This dungeon is now 85% full and in no danger of bursting. As an owner of the establishment, it is connected to, do you wish to claim this dungeon and take control of it? You will control access to this dungeon as long as it remains under 95% full. You will be held responsible for a dungeon burst if such an event happens. Do you wish to claim this dungeon? Y/N. This dungeon is currently denoted as Lair of the Underrodent. Do you wish to rename this dungeon? Oh, very interesting. She needed to think a bit first. She kept the notification, but moved it to the side. Running back to the brewery, she saw the germinated grains were ready to roast. She transferred them to a metal canister and placed them on a runic heating pad made for her by Alistair. This just takes about 10 minutes, shaking often. I want a golden brown coloring, but a few fully roasted that helps with the flavor. After roasting and grinding the malt, she added it to the standard setup for bludgeon brew and started on the brewing cantrip. I used 200 mana for brewing. This barrel will be done tomorrow. Thaddeus closed his book. Quite a bit of mana. That's going to be beyond the average brewer. I take it you can only do 1 barrel a day. Suzette laughed. Huh, with how popular it is. No, I can do 4 kegs in the morning and another 4 at night if needed. It's ready to drink a bit less than a day later. It's got 3 times the kick of normal blood. The dark mana really ups the alcohol content. They went back upstairs. Ben was quite happy to see her. She grabbed a half a dozen tankards in each hand and started refilling empty hands and gathering in the copper. She handed Thaddeus a full blood dark and poured one for herself. So, what are your thoughts? Thaddeus considered his options. The first was to fine the tavern, forbid the making of bludgeon brew, and toss a hefty fine at ACME. This wasn't ideal for many reasons. Firstly, the tavern keeper had simply modified the recipe, not just misused the name. Secondly, because of Timothy Wonderboy 54 raving about the brew on his videocast, he had several hundred bars wanting to carry the recipe. Thirdly, it was good beer. He may have to drink a lot of blood in his travels, but he didn't like it. And finally, he just didn't want to punish them. The tavern keeper may not have even known about the problems with copyright. From a story he'd gotten, neither of her bosses had said a word when she made the beer and named it. Timmy had assumed it was official. And since they sponsored his show, people everywhere assumed it was official as well. The problem was, he couldn't just let this pass. My thoughts are you screwed up badly, but I can help you fix it. Are you willing to train a team of my brewers on your methods, both magical and mundane? Suzette had no problem with that, but I need a bit more. My bosses will claim your tavern is gaining a vast amount of advertising from being able to claim the original recipe. They will want compensation for that. They spend a fortune sponsoring adventuring groups like Sir Timothy over there to gain such themselves. Can you guarantee ACME will put forth that sum? Suzette finished her beer. How about a trade? I get Timmy over there and a lot of other groups to sponsor your brand for free, plus give you a unique form of sponsorship that at this time, no one else can match. Thaddeus looked at the smiling barmaid/tavern keeper. What the hell was she up to? That is a mighty tall order. But, in general and non-binding terms, I will say that we might have a deal. When will you be able to give me details? How about later tonight? Sit and have some beer on the house. I'll set it up. Ben, pour Mr. Walgard whatever he wants. Mark it down as on the house. Have to be fair and make sure ACME gets its 20%. Be right back. Moving back downstairs for some privacy, she brought up the window and claimed the dungeon, followed by changing how the notifications were set up and giving a new name. equals 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 equals. Vern, Billy, and Layla were sitting at a small table in Billy's hut, trying to come up with some way to outweat the spells on the standing stones. They'd experimented until they'd used up all of Layla's crew twice. People had crawled, been thrown, charged together, and tried to tunnel in, all with no success. Layla suggested a deeper tunnel. Vern was talking about finding some players or NPCs with magic knowledge. All three had their screens light up. Congratulations! ACME Corporation or one of its employees has laid claim to a dungeon in the village of Sedgwick, earning ACME Corporation 50 building points for claiming a dungeon and 100 building points for being one of the first 10 dungeons discovered. Claim more building points to enhance your corporate holdings by constructing more public works or taking responsibility for dangerous parts of the world. Vern was ecstatic. Billy, my boy, you had another present for Uncle Vern? I should tan your hide for keeping it a secret, but I'm just too happy with you. 150 building points. That will give us a small office in the capital or a multi-story office building in one of the Duke cities. Where's this dungeon? Billy wished he knew himself. Time to stall. Let's grab a beer, Vern, and I'll tell you all about it. Layla followed along, fuming. How the hell was Billy pulling this shit out of his ass without her catching wind of it? The tavern was in full swing. Timmy had intended to come in and start some shit, get a bar fight going, and maybe have it spill into the town for a bit of looting and pillaging. Standard procedure for when Momko sent a gang into a small town to teach it a lesson. And he wanted to get a bit of revenge on whoever stole that demon kill from him. Dying was bad enough, but not getting a second chance at his demon? Unforgivable. But that plan was delayed when he saw an official bludgeon brew quality expert in town. He liked the money he got from being sponsored by Blood. It let him have a bit longer leash from grandmother. So tonight they would drink, maybe tomorrow go on a rampage. Besides a comely little barmaid, there wasn't anything in this town he needed, and Momko wanted to start causing ACME some problems. The bludgeon guy was getting awful chummy with Suzette the lonely barmaid, working on some deal about blood dar for what he overheard. He was about to grab another blood when his screen lit up with a message, as did everyone else's who was in or near the tavern. Raise a glass of blood to Zephyr, Ozzy, and Alistair, who have slain the vile Snick-Tick, the Ratkin Necromancer. Level 5 Elite Boss, who will be the next adventurers to venture into the lair of the Underrodent, sponsored by Blood Dark. Enhanced Dungeon, 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 Dungeon. More beer. Dungeon, 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 Dungeon. Dungeon, 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 Dungeon. Ozzy was doing his best to ignore the 24 drunken adventurers sitting in the basement of the tavern demanding to be led into the dungeon. He was just as glad to be out of it. He was applying all of his attention to a pile of food in front of him. Alistair had told him the best way to recover from the massive life drain he had taken was a lot of food and rest. Food came first, since he didn't trust this crowd and Suzette might need help. It had been sort of fun, though, to come back from their little adventure and find all those excited people shouting questions and wanting to know about their adventure. He just pointed at Zephyr and said, "Speak to our fearless leader." She was sitting on top of the loot chest, giving a blow-by-blow account of all the fights. Someone had given her a glass of ale for the pain. She'd feel it in the morning, but for now the young girl was having a great time. Alistair was sitting on a nearby barrel, enjoying his own beer, and then glaring at one of the younger men who made inappropriate comments. He estimated his daughter had another half hour until the beer hit her, and he'd have to pack her home. Billy had come down, followed by Vern. Vern just looked happy, but Billy obviously wanted to talk. He kept looking back and forth between Ozzy and Suzette and trying to get their attention. Suzette yelled to Ozzy to keep things together down here and retreated upstairs with Billy, Layla, and a gentleman wearing a derby in tow. Sir Timothy was way too excited, bouncing around like an overstimulated puppy. He started talking about a full raid to take out the underrodent. His crew had tried to immediately enter the dungeon, only to find they needed to be given access by the dungeon's controller. This sent Timmy running upstairs looking for Suzette. Things were actually quiet upstairs, the constant yelling from below just a muffled echo. Ben hurried to clear one of the larger tables of empty glasses and spilled beer. Suzette grabbed a seat on one side. Bill, Vern, and Layla on the other. Vern immediately started the conversation. Excellent job, young lady, on securing that asset for ACME. Billy told me he had a real crackerjack group of people, but I'm astounded at how fast things are moving. First, this ruined city, and now a dungeon? Damn fine job. I'm actually surprised how good he's gotten at keeping secrets from me. Want to explain that, Billy? Billy turned to Vern and shrugged. Well, you know how it is, Vern. I hate to disappoint you. I see everyone else promise the moon and underdeliver. I'd rather not waste your time. Dungeons are tricky things. I knew we had in the pipeline, but not the exact timing. I'd rather brag after the fact than before. Plus, I've got Momco running around the area. A couple of dozens of them right downstairs. But I'll echo your sentiments, Vern. Suzette is doing an excellent job. I'll mention to Derek that you should be getting a cut of this operation. Sort of a bonus for delivering on the dungeon. Billy was quite happy with Suzette. Rather than contradicting him, she just went along with his story, nodding her head. Suzette smiled innocently. Thank you, Billy. I'm just glad that our plans are working out so well. Some bad news, though. Derek took off today to get married. He won't be coming back. Don't worry, though. Layla helped me out with the problems. That little talk of ours really made me see things correctly. Billy looked from Suzette to Layla. Layla had a soured look on her face. Also, a lot of big lumps from bug bites. He remembered Layla tearing into Suzette just before she stepped on a hornet's nest or whatever she had done. Layla helped you? She certainly did. It was the perfect solution. She suggested I not worry about Derek and that I should buy the tavern myself. Layla looked ready to burst. I said Derek needed to find a sucker to buy the tavern if he wanted out. I didn't mean you. Suzette just smiled at her. Oh, well, after you called me a whore, I figured that sucker referred to me as well. My bad, but the deal is done. I own Derek's half of the tavern. She pushed forward the deed of sale for Billy to look at. Billy squinted at it. The letters were too big. He was used to contracts with much finer print. Yeah, it looks like you did. And you are up to your pointed ears in debt, too. You owe Derek a monthly payment. This complicates things. You work for ACME, and ACME owns the other half of the tavern. Suzette shook her head. Nope, not complicated at all. You told me you were happy with my work and that I was practically running the tavern. You also said you only cared about making sure all the workers got fed and that ACME got its 20% cut of the food and beverage sales. I can do all of that. I work for ACME 10 hours a day, 6 days a week as a barmaid. The rest of the time, I'm working as Suzette the tavern keeper. I don't need much sleep, remember? I'm betting I can increase Acme's profits from the tavern and make those payments to Derek. Unless I default on that, I think I'm in the clear. Layla was furious. Don't let her get away with that, Billy. How the hell is she going to make that much money? Suzette reached over and patted Layla's head. Don't worry about it, honey. After all, I can always shake my ass at all the men who come in the door and rent myself by the hour. Wasn't that your suggestion? I have to point out, though, that it wasn't my ass on display this afternoon. The boys did appreciate your shake, though. Layla tried to stand and dive across the table. Billy held her back, barely. He managed to get one hand on her mouth to muffle her screams and lock her arm behind her. Vern? I'm going to get Layla back to her hut. I think she's a bit out of sorts. Vern kept his eyes on Suzette, but nodded. You do that, Billy. You two have a nice evening. I need to work out a few things with our new partner. When the noise had died down again, Vern set his beer aside. So did Suzette. What is the deal with the dungeon? Someone said down there that you were in control, but ACME got credit for it. I got the system announcement. Suzette acknowledged that. ACME got credit for it because I work for ACME. But the reason I could claim the dungeon was partly my half ownership in the tavern, but mostly because I'm taking responsibility for it. That thing has to be managed. Too many people going in can cause problems. And bosses won't spawn. Too few, and it overflows, and the whole area goes to shit. Bad for long-term property values. And I get hit with some hideous penalty. So, part of my job is also managing the groups that go in and collecting the fees. Vern like fees. Oh, let's talk about that. Dungeon fees. That could be a nice revenue stream. In the last game, ACME had dozens of dungeons. We charged fees, collected magic items, or both. Very profitable. I assume you want a cut. Suzette had a puzzled look on her face. A cut? A what, Vern? ACME gets 20% of food and beverages sold. That's the contract. I don't see anything about dungeon fees. My dungeon, my fees. What? Suzette looked at him with a mock-serious look on her face. You signed a contract. If you didn't like what it said, you should have gotten a better contract. Balderdash. Suzette just smiled innocently. Billy taught me that yesterday. He's so smart. And Thaddeus has been teaching me about copyrights and sponsorships. It's been an interesting day. Sponsorship? What sponsorship? The Bludgeon Beer sponsorship deal that Mr. Walgard and I worked out. Isn't that right, Mr. Walgard? Suzette nodded her head towards the dapper patron sipping beer at the bar and talking with Ben. The man spun around on his bar stool and walked over. Pleasure to meet you, Mr. Throckmire. Thaddeus Walgard from Bludgeon Brew. What your lovely barmaid has said is essentially true. We have a unique sponsorship deal worked out that I think will be profitable for all parties involved, including ACME. Uncle Vern was feeling less and less in control of the situation, but the bottom line was the bottom line. All right, enough fun and games. Tell me how ACME profits, or I'll have a bushel of lawyers here by morning. Suzette had had her fun. Enough bear baiting for now. If she rolled over too quick, she'd have had to keep rolling. But she couldn't get away from the fact that while she had some points on her side, she still worked for ACME and her body was lying in a tank in jailhouse. Time to cut a deal while she held some aces. Here's my proposal. I'm in charge of running our tavern. The old deal stands. ACME gets its 20%, and we take care of feeding the local workers. But I want a cap on that. You can't run 200 people through here. After 50, I start charging Billy basic costs of food. The agreement with Bludgeon has a few parts. They get advertising on all public dungeon announcements. Any group that enters and does streaming or vidcasting gives them the normal amount of advertising, but doesn't charge Bludgeon Brew for it. Nor do I get a kickback from letting them stream. The tavern continues to sell Blood Dark, and I can experiment with new recipes, as long as I don't say they are official. ACME gets all profits from the brewery. Billy is building a brewery? Vern hadn't heard him mention that. Thaddeus spoke up. Yes, I'd like ACME to build a brewery in this location. I think we can start with 200 kegs of Blood Dark a week. ACME supplies the workers. We buy all the blood we need for the Northern Duchy from you. If we need breweries in the other duchies, ACME can set those up as well. I'll have the paperwork ready for you by tomorrow morning. Does that meet your approval, sir? More money was always good with Uncle Vern. Run it over tomorrow. Billy can approve it, and I'll pitch it to the board. But that seems like a good deal to me. Beer is cheap to make. Transportation was a pain, but that just pointed out the need for more roads. More roads meant more building points. Thaddeus tipped his hat to them. I will run along then and get to work. Good night to you, Mr. Throckmire. Suzette, wonderful working with you. I'm anxious to taste your next batch when it's brewed up. After Thaddeus have left, the final round started. Vernon was feeling better about things now. So, I haven't lost anything as far as the tavern goes, and I have a new revenue stream from the brewery. But that's chicken feed compared to a dungeon. Suzette conceded that. Could be, and that's why I moved quick to claim it. Leaving it unclaimed was just asking for trouble. Here's my proposal. There will be fees charged to the groups entering the dungeon. We split the gold down the middle between myself and ACME. We flip a coin for who gets the first magic item we collect and alternate from there. Vern shook his head. Not good enough. The board won't let me sign a contract like that. You aren't an equal partner. ACME will have to defend this area. That can cost a lot. And how do we get magic items out of it? 2 ways. Suzette showed him the proposed contract for adventuring groups. We charge every group a fee of 1 gold a person. Any group that doesn't want to pay the fee can instead give me first pick of any of the magic items that the group gets. I'll know what they get because I'll be in the group, not in the dungeon, but in the group with access to the logs. That means I also get to open every loot chest. The dungeon lets me do this automatically. I like the idea, but I hate the cut. Acme gets 90%, you get 10%. Bullshit. Not good enough. The responsibility for the dungeon is on me. I don't even know what the penalty is for it overflowing, but we know it's bad enough that I know you or Billy don't want it on your shoulders. Ugh. No, Vernon did not want to be responsible. While he didn't make threats, he made promises. If building a road gained ACME building points, letting their dungeon overflow and destroy the town would surely lose them points. Or worse, a valid point. You have to make sure the dungeon is cared for. I have to make sure you have some security here in Sedgwick. I'll go 75% per 25%, but ACME gets the first 3 items we take in. I'll also want to see weekly and monthly accounting and the ability to audit dungeon logs. Suzette was fine with those terms. She knew she could make money and didn't mind ACME checking up on her. Even expected it. I assume that you'll want some ACME-sponsored teams going in. I'm okay with not charging the upfront fee, but the cut from the loot chest stays the same. That's fair and works out in Acme's favor. Anything else? You have a paladin anxious to get access to his rowdy horde. Let's take his money and get things rolling. Vern liked quick profits. ACME would be getting money anytime groups went in, and 5 groups were ready to go. Suzette shook Vern's hand. Yeah, one last thing. I work for Billy, and Billy works for you. I'm not taking orders from Layla. If that bitch gets in my face, she's heading to respawn after a painful death. Vern laughed. Do her some good. I'm okay with that. Meet with Billy at 6 a.m. He'll have contracts ready, but I think you and I have a deal. As Vern walked out, Suzette yelled at Timmy. Yo, Sir Timothy, you ready to go dungeon diving? Just sign here and pony up 25 gold.